Hello and welcome to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Explore our playlist for more captivating novels, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new audiobook. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 61. Who are you talking about? The front desk of the company generally had to go to work early. The colorful and stylish front desk lady just arrived, and she felt very strange when she saw a visitor. It's not the face that there were visitors that surprised her, but that the property manager of the office building personally accompanied the high-end office buildings were strictly managed, and there were generally two ways to go upstairs, either by swiping the card or registering on the first floor. For example, those who deliver food and express delivery must register on the first floor if they want to go upstairs. The same went for visitors unless they had been greeted in advance. But even if it was an important visitor of a certain company in the office building, the property management would at most swipe the card for them. It was impossible for them to accompany anyone, especially the property manager. So, the front desk lady was puzzled. "Miss Dao." The property manager gestured and led the way to the front desk. "Ma'am, who are you looking for?" The front desk lady asked politely with a professional smile. "Your president, Mr. Li. I have an appointment," the mysterious woman said. She didn't take off her mask, and her voice was clear. It's impolite not to take off the mask, but she didn't want to attract crowds. When she was on the first floor just now, she thought that Symphony Company had greeted the property management company and she could go upstairs directly. Unexpectedly, there was no record on the property management side, so she had to take off her mask to register, which had already triggered some riots and also led to the property manager personally accompanying them up. Afterwards, she put on the mask again in the elevator, because she didn't want to be recognized by the people going up and down in the elevator, and there would be some unnecessary troubles and wasted time. "Appointment," the front desk lady said and started flipping through the notebook. The pre-appointed meeting with Li Ruobing would definitely be recorded at the front desk. "My surname is Dao," the mysterious woman said again. The lady at the front desk knew her surname. Just now when the property manager came together, she mentioned, "Miss Dao," repeatedly, but after she turned 2 pages, she stood up straight and shook her head in doubt at the mysterious woman, politely said, "I'm sorry, Miss Dao, I haven't found your appointment record. Why don't you call our president to confirm?" Very formulaic answer. It was basically this set of rhetoric when dealing with guests who do not have an appointment record. It didn't offend anyone, and if there was a problem, it was not the front desk's fault. No record. The mysterious woman was puzzled. Strange. Very strange. She was suddenly notified to fly back, and she only arrived in Donghai 9 hours ago. She thought that this time her godfather wanted to help a friend again, so she asked her to come back to pick up the endorsement. But after she came back, her godfather reminded her repeatedly, even warned her. He said it was the company of his good brother and his woman. He said it was the eldest granddaughter of the Li family, told her to be polite and behaved, to fully cooperate in the endorsement, and to accept as much endorsement fee as the other party wanted, and not to bargain. She could feel it, and she knew very well that if she messed up this time, she would offend a big shot for her godfather. They must not be offended. She came in a cautious mood. But what now? Didn't even make an appointment. It's fine if the front desk of the property didn't receive the notice in advance, even the company's front desk didn't know. "Miss Dao, why don't you sit in the reception room first?" The front desk lady was also very clever. Seeing that the mysterious woman seemed to be in trouble, she said politely, "Our president is in a meeting right now, and we may not be able to receive your call. If you wait a moment, I'll verify it, and I'll notify you right away." It's impossible for the front desk lady to call Li Ruobing directly, at most she would call the president's secretary. She also met many noble people, and she could tell that the mysterious woman in front of her was probably not an ordinary person. She was not lying if she said to check it out. She would definitely ask. But certainly not now. Now all the company's top executives were meeting in the conference room, and she didn't dare to disturb them at all. Then, "Okay," the mysterious woman said hesitantly, following the direction of the receptionist. She was about to walk towards the reception room, but she stopped after taking 2 steps, and then walked back quickly. Please confirm again. As she spoke, she pulled down the mask, took off her sunglasses, and smiled sweetly at the front desk lady. Do you know me? I really have an appointment with your president. It was because she was afraid that there might be some misunderstanding. If she couldn't wait and delayed the other party's business, if the godfather called to ask again, it would appear that she didn't care about it. The lady at the front desk was stunned. Naturally, the popular superstar Dao Menying. The lady at the front desk immediately thought that it might have something to do with the endorsement. The relationship between a female star and a cosmetics company was basically an endorsement. And yesterday Li Ruobing became very angry because of the sudden car accident of the spokesperson. She held meetings in the morning and afternoon, mobilized all the senior management, and used all the contacts in the company to find a new spokesperson. It's all over the company. Then, Dao Menying came to the company suddenly, probably because some awesome executive contacted her. She didn't know who can be so awesome. She didn't even know why there was no appointment record. Miss Dao, wait a moment, right now, there may be some misunderstanding, maybe something went wrong when the president's secretary and assistant handed over to us. I'll check it out for you right away. The lady at the front desk spoke, picked up the phone at the front desk, but paused again, and glanced at the company's internal address book pasted inside the bezel of the front desk, among which several numbers were in bold. Those were the phone numbers of several core executives in the company, and the one on the top was Li Ruobing's own. The president was in a meeting. Very important meeting. The lady at the front desk thought for a while, gritted her teeth, and dialed Li Ruobing's cell phone number. On the 32nd floor, in the first meeting room of Symphony Company. More than 30 people were in a meeting, including marketing, public relations, personnel, finance, business department, etc., as well as the heads of the 2 small and 1 large production bases under Symphony. All of them were there. There are only 13 days left. There are only 13 days left until the press conference. I don't care what method you use. I will look for one, and you should look for one too. Li Ruobing said with a cold face, knocking on the table. For this press conference, we have spent nearly 2 years in all kinds of preparations from research and development to production. This is our 2 years of hard work. It will be officially released and sold. If the success falls short, the company's listing plan will have to be postponed, and the listed shares I promised to you will have to be voided. I give you a salary that is much higher than the industry average, and I don't give you shares to let you eat nothing. If you can't handle even a small matter, what use do IHS Avenue for you? Li Ruobing had been really angry since the meeting was held. Because, all the executives reported to her, no one contacted a spokesperson who met Li Ruobing's standards. They would just contact. Li Ruobing would personally attend the negotiation, but they couldn't even get in touch. Although Li Ruobing understood that it's not that the group of people under him are incompetent, but Ding Ruolong was secretly disrupting the situation. But, this was the case with managing a company. If the boss solved everything by herself, then even if the people under her were not trash, they would become trash. When major problems arise in the company, they should work together to find a solution. As the boss, Li Ruobing put pressure on the company to push their potential, which was also the right way. There was no sound in the conference room. All the executives did not dare to breathe. Are you dumb? Talk. Li Ruobing patted the table. Hey, boss, I actually think that if you can lower your standards for spokespersons. A middle-aged man sitting on Li Ruobing's right coughed and said cautiously. It was not easy for him to dare to speak first, because he was a member of the Li family and the first batch to come to assist Li Ruobing in starting a business, so he dared to speak. Jingle bell. Before she could finish speaking, someone's cell phone rang. People in the meeting room looked at each other. Who would dare not turn on their phone in this kind of meeting? Of course, Li Ruobing herself. Li Ruobing picked up the phone and looked at it, then frowned. If it was someone else calling, she might hang up and ask later, but, the company's front desk called. The front desk dared to call her. Because the front desk wouldn't dare, but they just called, which meant it's a very important matter. Speak. Li Ruobing answered directly. She listened to it, then stood up abruptly and said, Who? Who are you talking about? Chapter 62. Don't compare with Li Ruobing. Boss, it's Dao Menying. She said she has an appointment with you, the front desk lady said again. Her voice was very low, and she felt a little stuffy. She was probably standing in the front desk, turned her head away from the visitors, and said in a low voice while covering the phone. Are you sure? Li Ruobing didn't know why she still didn't believe it. Yes, boss, the front desk lady said. I'll go down right away. Let her wait. Li Ruobing hung up after speaking, took a deep breath, and suppressed the excitement in her heart. She turned her head and glanced at the meeting room, and said directly, the meeting is over. Dazed for a moment, the executive sat there motionless and looked at Li Ruobing. What? Why did the meeting suddenly end? Li Ruobing didn't say anything, and walked directly outside the meeting room, and all the secretary assistants naturally followed her. It was worth mentioning that Li Ruobing only had one female secretary, but had many assistants. Even Wu Chen was her assistant in name in the company, but Wu Chen was purely in name and generally did not come to the company. He found her. How did he find her? How could he find her? One day. He really found her in one day. How did he do it? What did he do? Wasn't he playing games? Didn't he go to transfer the ownership with Tai in the afternoon? Leaving the conference room, Li Ruobing led the people to the stairs, but her mind was full of thoughts. Li Ruobing also knew about Li Ruotai's transfer of the Donghai Wafu house to Wu Chen yesterday. Of course Li Ruotai told her. Just after the house transfer was completed, Li Ruotai called Li Ruobing. Although Li Ruobing was going to see Dao Menying now. Dao Menying was indeed extremely important to Symphony Company. But at the moment Li Ruobing's mind was full of Wu Chen. She wanted to call Wu Chen to ask. But Dao Menying was waiting downstairs. The company needed a spokesperson too much. As a businessman, Li Ruobing still knew the priorities. She went downstairs. Li Ruobing brought people to the 31st floor, and saw Dao Menying from a distance. Dao Menying had already put away her glasses and mask, surrounded by a group of young people from the company, all of whom had arrived at the company not long ago in the morning. They were gathering around her for autographs. The boss is here. Go back, go back. Let's go. They didn't know who said it first, but the group of young male and female employees suddenly stopped signing. They all bowed their heads and walked away quickly. It seemed that in just a few seconds, the area around the front desk was empty. Dao Menying turned her head to look at Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing was already approaching. The two raised their hands almost simultaneously. Hi Miss Dao, what a neglect. I have been so busy these days that I forgot to tell the front desk. Li Ruobing smiled professionally and shook hands with Dao Menying. Although she didn't know why Wu Chen didn't tell him, Li Ruobing could be sure that Dao Menying was found by Wu Chen. She couldn't show timidity in front of outsiders, so Li Ruobing had to make up for this mistake. Ms. Li is too polite. Wow, Ms. Li, you are so beautiful and your skin is so good. I never thought that a strong CEO of a big company can have such a good skin after working day and night. I am envious. How do you take care of it? Dao Menying began to praise Li Ruobing as soon as she opened her mouth. Not only because of Lei Cheng's orders to her. Also because she was really amazed by Li Ruobing. In terms of appearance, both of them were very beautiful, but Dao Menying thought that Li Ruobing's skin was really much better than her own, and the gap in some small details was magnified in her eyes. Although Dao Menying was amazing in the movie, she was too thin in reality, mainly because people appear fat in camera, so if she wanted to look thinner in camera, she must be thinner in reality. Also, because of the year-round filming, costume dramas often have to wear makeup, very heavy makeup. Even the best cosmetics could be overused, plus she often stayed up late for filming, so her skin was indeed a little worse than Li Ruobing's. In fact, her skin was still very good, but Li Ruobing was even better. Then temperament. The two belonged to different types, so it was not easy to compare. What really surprised Dao Menying was Li Ruobing's aura. So frightening, Scarier than some senior officials' wives. Natural and calm, but not lacking in sharpness. As soon as she appeared, she was the only protagonist on the scene. This point was the biggest gap between the two. Ha ha ha, Ms. Dao is too good at talking. You are very beautiful. I am a businessman. How can I compare with a big star like you? If your fans hear about it, they won't spare me. Li Ruobing smiled half-jokingly. Doubts arose in her heart again. She was holding Dao Menying, which was what a businessman should do at this moment. But why did Dao Menying brag flatter as soon as she came up? Because of what? A superstar who had been lukewarm for a few years and suddenly became popular. Not only had she not swelled at all, but she was polite. Miss Dao, please go upstairs. The two exchanged a few words of courtesy, and Li Ruobing asked Dao Menying to go upstairs to her office. Following Li Ruobing to the 33rd floor, Dao Menying saw bodyguards everywhere in the corridor. A lot of pressure suddenly appeared in her heart. If it's just bodyguards, of course it wouldn't put pressure on her. She also had a lot of bodyguards, but she didn't bring them out this time, and she didn't attend the event. Naturally, she had to keep a low profile. However, combined with Lei Cheng's previous orders, Dao Menying felt the gap. Women love to compare. The more beautiful a woman was, the more she loved to compare. Dao Menying had heard of the family background. Although she didn't know much about it, she had heard of it. She knew she couldn't compare. In terms of appearance, Dao Menying had already said that she was worse than Li Ruobing, not because of her facial features, but mainly because her skin was not as good as it was when she was 18 or 19. In terms of aura, Dao Menying was crushed by Li Ruobing. Dao Menying didn't know why she suddenly felt ashamed. One was like, she felt that although she was a star, she just had a beautiful skin, and what people cared about was more about her appearance, while Li Ruobing gave people the impression that her beauty was just an embellishment. Her temperament, her aura, was superb. She just stood there, and she gave people a feeling that she was very powerful. Very eye-catching. If Wu Chen was present at this moment, if Wu Chen knew what Dao Menying was thinking, he would probably persuade Dao Menying. Don't compare with Li Ruobing. This woman Li Ruobing had more than just beauty. Especially don't compare your aura with her. Li Ruobing's strength came from her bones. No other woman of the same age could compare with her. Comparing with Li Ruobing, that was looking for abuse. No matter how beautiful you. They arrived at the president's office. Li Ruobing originally thought that Dao Menying would let her assistant follow in, but no, Dao Menying followed in alone. Talking about endorsement, when it came to money negotiations, one person would have problems, especially celebrities. The biggest reason why celebrities need an agent was because there were many things that celebrities couldn't say themselves, and they would offend others, so they needed an agent. But Dao Menying came in by herself. She didn't even bring her manager with her this time, and she didn't know why. Miss Dao, please sit down. Li Ruobing let Dao Menying sit down, and asked the secretary to bring coffee. After the secretary left, Li Ruobing and Dao Menying were left in the office. Li Ruobing returned to the boss's desk and sat down, then smiled and signaled Dao Menying to wait a moment. She took out her cell phone and made a call. She called Wu Chen. It connected right away. Honey, Miss Dao is here. Li Ruobing spoke like a little girl in love, but Wu Chen, who knew Li Ruobing well, knew that she was not only pretending but also knew of her meaning of questioning. Oh, Wu Chen lightly replied, oh. Chapter 63. Li Ruobing is so shocked. Li Ruobing really wanted to ask Wu Chen why he didn't tell her in advance. Because Wu Chen didn't say anything, Dao Menying came and was blocked at the front desk. She almost didn't even see anyone. But because of the presence of outsiders, it was impossible for Li Ruobing to really question him. She knew that Wu Chen must understand the meaning of her call, but Wu Chen actually replied, oh. Oh, this word used alone was quite normal more than 10 years ago, but it could be said to be very irritating when it was used like this now. Li Ruobing's brows trembled, as if she didn't heard what Wu Chen said, and continued, well, my dear, I'll be busy first. After she finished speaking, she hung up the phone naturally, as if her conversation with Wu Chen went well. Boss Li and her husband really love each other, it's really enviable. Dao Menying said at the right time. Of course she didn't know whether Li Ruobing was married or not. She didn't even know who Li Ruobing's man and godfather Lei Cheng called the good brother. Lei Cheng told her yesterday that he was helping a good brother and his wife's company. Lei Cheng didn't tell her too much details, but told her what to do, and didn't even let her stay with him overnight. He was in a hurry, as if there was something urgent to do. After Dao Menying met Li Ruobing today, she knew that a woman like Li Ruobing would not be easily subdued by a man, and she was from the Li family with a very large background, so it was impossible for her to be someone's mistress. Therefore, she subconsciously thought that it was Li Ruobing's husband who was looking for her godfather to do things. She didn't think it was her boyfriend, because godfather's brother was not too young, he must be in his 30s, right? Li Ruobing would be 30 years old in a few years, so they wouldn't just be in a relationship, right? Marriage was normal. With different circles, it was impossible for Dao Menying to know too much about the Li family and Li Ruobing, but she heard a little. Husband. Li Ruobing looked strange for a moment in surprise, and didn't know what to think of, and then said, Miss Dao misunderstood, we are not married yet. We are currently in love, and we are boyfriend-girlfriend. Ah, sorry, I'm really sorry. Dao Menying apologized, knowing that she had misunderstood. It doesn't matter, our relationship is very stable, and we will get married sooner or later. Li Ruobing said, and then asked, by the way, I haven't asked Ms. Dao yet, how did you and my family know each other? Wu Chen said yesterday that he didn't know Dao Menying. Now, Li Ruobing thought Wu Chen was lying. How could he find someone in one day if he didn't know him? Not only did she feel that Wu Chen had lied, but she also absolutely believed that Wu Chen had set her up so that she could make a bet with him. A bet was a bet, and Li Ruobing admitted that even if she lost, it's worth it for the company. It's not a loss to give Wu Chen 20 million. Li Ruobing didn't think she would be jealous. After all, she was not really in love with Wu Chen. But the bet had been increased once. If she lost, she would kneel down and admit her mistake. So if Li Ruobing wanted to set Dao Menying up now, if Wu Chen could be proved to be lying, then the bet could be overturned. Li Ruobing would still give the money, she just didn't want to kneel down. Li Ruobing was not the kind of person who would renege on debts. She just felt that Wu Chen must have lied to her. We don't know each other, Dao Menying said. You don't know him. Didn't he ask you to come? Li Ruobing's expression suddenly changed. Yes, well, my godfather asked me to come. My godfather and Ms. Li's boyfriend are brothers. He found my godfather, and my godfather asked me to come. Dao Menying said. She was raised by Lei Cheng. But the age gap, and being in the entertainment industry was easy to have such scandals, so Dao Menying said that Lei Cheng was her godfather. Your godfather, Boss Lei. Li Ruobing knew who it was right away. Of course she knew Lei Cheng's existence. She also knew that Lei Cheng was Dao Menying's financial backer. This kind of thing was not a secret at all to a big man with enough power, not even a big secret in the entertainment industry. Few stars were actually clean. And Lei Cheng's praise of others couldn't always be hidden. Yes, it's him. Dao Menying nodded. Li Ruobing frowned slightly. Wu Chen actually knew Lei Cheng. Brother. When did this happen? Li Ruobing and Lei Cheng had never been in contact, but she knew that this person, the second son of Hongfa Lei's family, Lei Zhenghui's youngest son, left the family and came to Donghai because he failed in the family's internal struggle. In Li Ruobing's perception, Lei Cheng was a very low-key rich man who rarely socialized with people, and it could even be said that he was not very easy to contact. Anyone who wanted to take the initiative to contact him usually aroused his suspicion. She heard that he was plotted by his elder brother and almost died, so he lived very cautiously these years. Ms. Li, is your boyfriend's surname Wu? Seeing that Li Ruobing's expression was not right, Dao Menying asked. She didn't know Wu Chen's full name, but she knew his surname, because Lei Cheng mentioned, Brother Wu, when he was talking to her. Yes. Li Ruobing nodded. That's right. Dao Menying smiled. It seems that you don't know how your boyfriend found me. I guess, it may be that Mr. Wu wants to surprise you, Ms. Li. Haha, he has a good heart. Li Ruobing also smiled. The words came out like this, but Li Ruobing was surprised. This was indeed a surprise, but it also contained fright. Li Ruobing wanted to see Wu Chen very much now, and then pinch Wu Chen's neck and ask, "What's going on?" In the next hour or so, Li Ruobing stopped talking. She would definitely ask Wu Chen later, but it's important to get down to business. Li Ruobing introduced to Dao Menying the company situation and the new product launch event to Dao Menying. She also asked about Dao Menying's schedule, saying that if the follow-up promotion conflicted with Dao Menying's schedule, Symphony could adjust it. But what Li Ruobing didn't expect was that Dao Menying agreed to everything, and Symphony didn't need to change the schedule. She would fully cooperate. Even when Li Ruobing mentioned the issue of endorsement fees, Dao Menying didn't mention it. Instead, she asked Li Ruobing to quote, and mention that, "We are all friends, and the friendship price is fine. I can't ask for too much." Li Ruobing was so shocked. Wu Chen and Lei Cheng, brothers. What brother? The kind that kowtowed and bowed to each other. The process of negotiating and signing the contract was extremely smooth. Before 10 o'clock in the morning, Dao Menying officially signed the endorsement contract with Symphony Fashion. Li Ruobing originally wanted to give her the full endorsement fee. It was all favors. Since it was Wu Chen's favor, if she used it, she would owe Wu Chen. But Dao Menying just agreed, so she didn't need that much, so the final endorsement fee was equivalent to the price of a first-line female star, which didn't match Dao Menying's current popularity. Dao Menying left after signing the contract because she had to catch a plane back to film. Li Ruobing personally sent Dao Menying downstairs. It's all set. Dao Menying would come back in a week. Before the press conference, she would shoot the promotional materials and promotional videos. She would also come to the Symphony Fashion during the press conference. After seeing off Dao Menying, Li Ruobing hurried back to her office. As soon as she sat down, he picked up his mobile phone and dialed Wu Chen's number. After waiting for more than 10 seconds, Wu Chen answered. "Where are you?" "Come to the company," Li Ruobing said directly. "I'm busy, I don't have time. I'll go at noon," Wu Chen replied, with a strange breathing rhythm. "Huh, where are you?" Li Ruobing asked again. At this moment, Li Ruobing vaguely heard a woman's voice in the background of Wu Chen. "Sir, is this comfortable?" Li Ruobing stood up all of a sudden, and then asked, "Where are you?" Chapter 64. You Can Really Brag. In a luxuriously decorated, dimly lit room, on a large and comfortable massage bed, Wu Chen was lying on his stomach on the phone. A very young female technician with an appearance of 8 points after makeup was sitting on Wu Chen's back, relaxing Wu Chen's shoulders. Her figure was very unique, not the usual thin chopstick-legged figure, but exaggerated lines. Slim waist and wide hips, very similar to European and American fitness women. Where it should be big was big, and where it should be small was small. "Why do you seem so excited?" Wu Chen laughed while holding his mobile phone, because the female technician was giving him a massage, but his breathing was unsteady. "What did you hear? Are you jealous?" Wu Chen deliberately teased her. It was also a test of Li Ruobing's reaction. That's why he didn't ask the female technician to stop when he was answering the phone. Li Ruobing in the office suddenly calmed down. In fact, she didn't even know why she was so excited all of a sudden. When she heard a woman's voice from Wu Chen's side and asked, "Are you comfortable?" she stood up involuntarily, as if she cared a little bit, and Li Ruobing didn't even think of this kind of caring. "Hey," Li Ruobing sneered, sat down again, and said, "You really have leisure time, looking for a woman at this time, while I'm so angry in the morning." "I'm young," Wu Chen replied. He didn't explain. The real situation was not what Li Ruobing thought. He's here for a massage. He would never tell Li Ruobing that he had been exercising his muscles for several hours before going to bed last night, and he woke up with severe pain all over his body today, so he came for a massage to relax. Before, he had no future in his life, and was stuck on July 7th, constantly resetting. Even if he exercised, the results would be reset, so his body was that of a normal college student. But yesterday, Wu Chen really exercised too hard, and when he woke up, it was really painful. It's like this at the beginning of exercise, and it would always go through this stage, so Wu Chen was mentally prepared. If he wanted to build muscle, pain was not a bad thing. But he didn't plan to tell Li Ruobing, because he would feel very mentally retarded. It's not massage that's retarded. It's because of the massage, the exercise had made him almost useless. When can you come to the company? When will it end? Li Ruobing asked again in a cold voice. It's been just over an hour, it will take another hour, Wu Chen replied casually. You can really brag. Beep beep, Li Ruobing hung up after finishing speaking. Wu Chen was stunned. What am I bragging about? He thought for a while before reacting. Li Ruobing thought he was looking for a woman to do that kind of thing, and asked him when he would finish going to the company, but he said that it was just over an hour, and another hour. Oh, Wu Chen sighed with a smile, and put the phone aside casually. Before, he put his mobile phone in his coat pocket, and his coat was in the cabinet. When he heard the ringing of the mobile phone, it was brought by a female technician for him, so it took more than 10 seconds to pick it up. Sir, is this okay? Seeing that Wu Chen had finished calling, the female technician asked again. Well, go harder, Wu Chen said. Soon, it was 11 o'clock at noon. The door of the room opened suddenly, and Li Ruotai, who was wearing a suit, took a step into the room, tilted his head to Wu Chen and said, Come on, brother-in-law, go eat. It's already noon. The massage place Wu Chen was at right now, not somewhere else. It was Li Ruotai's Crown Entertainment Clubhouse. For things like massage, it was natural to find a professional. Although Li Ruotai's place was not a clean place, the female technicians here had received extremely professional training and really know how to press. So Wu Chen drove over. He told Li Ruotai that he had a stiff neck, and asked him to find someone with great skills. That's why the female technician who gave Wu Chen a massage was of a European and American fitness figure. She was not the most beautiful in Li Ruotai's place. Some plastic surgery faces were prettier than her, but her massage technique was really good. The most important thing was that she had great energy. She usually did exercise. Some bosses liked her figure. This was the point. I don't want to eat, Wu Chen said, picked up the phone, glanced at the time, and then said. Okay, let's stop her for today, I have something to do. Hearing what Wu Chen said, the female technician got up and moved out of the way. She started packing essential oils and things like that. Li Ruotai glanced at the female technician. He knew the people under him, but he still asked, Brother-in-law, is it okay? He gave her praises. Thank you, sir. The female technician thanked quickly. The boss's brother-in-law praised her so much, of course she had to be polite. Okay, let's go. Li Ruotai tilted her head to the female technician and said. The female technician collected the things and walked out with the bag. When passing by Li Ruotai tilted her head and said in a low voice, Go and get 10,000 yuan. I'll give you a vacation in the afternoon. Go play. Thank you, boss. The female technician happily bowed to Li Ruotai, and went out happily. She knew that there must be a reward for the boss's brother-in-law, and the money and vacation, although the process was quite tiring. For more than 2 hours in a row, she kept relaxing Wu Chen's muscles. After the female technician left, Li Ruotai leaned against the door with his hands in his pockets and asked, Is brother-in-law in a hurry? If you're not in a hurry, let's have a meal first. It won't waste much time. Your sister is looking for me, am I in a hurry? Wu Chen raised his head and asked with a smile. Wu Chen didn't say whether he was in a hurry, but Li Ruotai immediately showed an expression of, I understand. It's not a question of whether the elder sister was in a hurry to find her brother-in-law, but whether she was in a hurry or not. Li Ruotai left first. Wu Chen changed his clothes after taking a bath again. He was covered in essential oils, so he couldn't do without washing. By the time Wu Chen drove to Block 7 of the CBD, it was almost 12 noon. Although it was already lunchtime, Li Ruobing was still waiting for Wu Chen to come over in the office. Did you sign the contract? Wu Chen just entered the office and asked Li Ruobing, who was behind the desk looking at the computer, smiled, and then walked to the sofa. Li Ruobing turned her head and looked at Wu Chen with a blank expression on her face. Her eyes moved with Wu Chen's movement until Wu Chen was sitting on the sofa, facing her, and raised her legs. Is there something wrong with my face? Talk, what's wrong? Did it not go well? Wu Chen looked at himself when he saw Li Ruobing, and asked with a smile without saying a word. You, Li Ruobing squinted her eyes, paused before continuing, can't you find a woman? Why do you want to find that kind? Are you comfortable? Don't you feel sick? Also, aren't you afraid of getting sick? She was still struggling with this matter. Through the sentence, are you comfortable? Li Ruobing judged that the woman was not Wu Chen's lover, but a woman in that kind of place. Wu Chen laughed, the kind that couldn't control his expression well. Ha, aren't you being too lenient? Are you really jealous? Wu Chen asked with a smile. I'm afraid you'll get sick and die soon. The act has to go on. As if I'll be jealous. Li Ruobing said, showing an expression of forgetting to care about Wu Chen, and decisively changed the subject. You know Lei Cheng? Friend, Wu Chen replied. When did you meet? Li Ruobing asked again. Don't you think you're asking too much? Wu Chen asked back, smiling again. You should also understand that there are secrets that cannot be revealed in our intelligence business. Li Ruobing shut up expressionlessly. No more talking. She knew that Wu Chen wouldn't say it. It's useless to ask. Come on, apologize. Wu Chen was straightforward, raised his hand to signal Li Ruobing to come over, and pointed to the carpet in front of him. Chapter 65. This kneeling. Wu Chen didn't intend to humiliate Li Ruobing. How could the matter of willing to bet and admit defeat lead to humiliation? However, Wu Chen knew that if he wanted to take down a woman like Li Ruobing and make her loosen her guard to him, she must first let her bow her head to him. However, it was difficult, it was extremely difficult to force her to bow her head. But betting was another matter. Li Ruobing wanted to be strong and competitive, and this kind of character naturally had to be based on her keeping her promises, otherwise victory or defeat would be meaningless. Behind the boss desk, Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen quietly, and said that it was true that she didn't regret it. She really regretted it. Why did she bet Wu Chen further? She could accept anything else, except kneeling, which made her very uncomfortable. She didn't think she would lose before agreeing. 50 million. I refuse. Li Ruobing spoke suddenly, and Wu Chen replied even more abruptly. Almost as soon as she finished speaking, Wu Chen spoke back. It might be difficult for someone else to understand these words at once. But Wu Chen understood what Li Ruobing meant as soon as Li Ruobing opened her mouth. At first, it was agreed that Li Ruobing hired Wu Chen to find a spokesperson, and she paid 20 million yuan. The bet was that if Wu Chen failed to do it, Li Ruobing would give 20 million yuan to Li Ruobing. It's a commission, and she had to guarantee that if Wu Chen would have other women in the future, she wouldn't be jealous. It's all right. The additional kneeling and apology was the problem. So Li Ruobing's 50 million meant, she would Wu Chen an extra 30 million, if she wouldn't kneel down and apologize. As long as she could not kneel, Li Ruobing was willing to give Wu Chen 30 million. It was said that a man had gold under his knees, and Li Ruobing had a treasury under her knees. No need to discuss. Li Ruobing asked again. You want to go back on your word? That's up to you. I can't force you, Wu Chen said, and shrugged his shoulders. I'm not going back on my word. I'm negotiating terms with you. The initiative is yours, Li Ruobing said immediately. There is nothing to talk about, Wu Chen said, and then asked with a smile, Boss Li, you said, if I lose, will you allow me to change the conditions? You, Li Ruobing, always keep what you say. If you really lose Ding Ruolong's bet, you will accept it, right? Li Ruobing felt uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. The thought of kneeling down to a man like Wu Chen gave her a headache. In fact, her impression of Wu Chen was quite good, even very good, because Wu Chen's abilities and means were really beyond her imagination. Before Wu Chen came, she even reflected on herself, Why did she care a little about Wu Chen going to play with women? She even doubted herself, whether she fell in love with Wu Chen, a mysterious man whom she had only known for 2 days. The more mysterious and unpredictable, the more attractive. And the extremely strong personal ability met Li Ruobing's criteria for choosing a spouse. But it was also because of what happened in the morning that Li Ruobing felt that Wu Chen was not that powerful. In Li Ruobing's view, this was not a moral or legal issue, but a man who couldn't even control his desires and was willing to risk getting sick to find that kind of woman. How powerful could he be? Would he die if he didn't do it? I have to say that after the phone call in the morning, Wu Chen's impression in Li Ruobing's heart was greatly reduced. This was one of the reasons why Li Ruobing was very uncomfortable now. 70 million. Li Ruobing asked again. Don't be like this, it seems like I'm forcing you. Wu Chen smiled lightly. Why don't you forget it? If you really don't want to, I won't force it. We are now a cooperative relationship, so it's not too much trouble. What Wu Chen said made it even more impossible for Li Ruobing to let it go. Being so owed to Wu Chen gave Wu Chen the impression that she was not keeping her word. Li Ruobing absolutely couldn't do it. Then speak. I really don't want to kneel, so change the condition. It'll be up to you. Li Ruobing said again. Forget it. Wu Chen only gave 2 words this time, not much to say. Li Ruobing stared at Wu Chen. For a while, Wu Chen still didn't say anything. He just looked at her. Putting his hands on the table, Li Ruobing stood up slowly while supporting the edge of the table. Li Ruobing, I'm definitely not someone who doesn't keep her promises. Li Ruobing stood up and looked at Wu Chen and said seriously. Of course she kept her word, but she would be flexible, but if Wu Chen didn't agree to change the terms, then she could only perform according to the bet. Please. Wu Chen stretched out his hand and gestured for his position in front of him. Li Ruotai walked out from behind the boss's desk, reached the side of the boss's desk, supported the desk with her hands, and took off the high heels one by one, throwing them on the ground. She had to kneel and apologize. It was hard to kneel in high heels, so she took them off. She moved a little slowly. Wu Chen understood that no matter how trustworthy a person was, facing this kind of thing might also experience intense ideological struggle. After dropping the high heels, Li Ruobing, who was wearing stockings, was about to walk towards Wu Chen. Ding-a-ling, her mobile phone rang. The mobile phone was on her desk. She looked back, took 2 steps back, picked it up, glanced at the screen, and connected it. Sister, has brother-in-law come to your company? It was Li Ruotai. He's here, what's the matter? What do you need with him? Li Ruobing said. Someone is checking on my brother-in-law, using a lot of connections, and I just got the news, Li Ruotai said quickly. Huh, who? Li Ruobing frowned. Jinfu Group, the Su family. I've already had someone conduct a reverse investigation, and I don't know what the Su family is up to. Li Ruotai said, will you tell brother-in-law about this, or should I call him? Let me tell him, Wait a minute. Li Ruobing seemed to think of something suddenly, then said after a pause, what did you say in the first sentence? Someone is checking on brother-in-law. No, the last sentence. Quote, has brother-in-law come to your company? What's the matter, sister? Didn't you meet him? Li Ruotai said. How do you know? Li Ruobing asked immediately. Brother-in-law is at my place this morning. At your place? Yeah, at my place. He has a stiff neck. He came to me for a massage. I arranged it and it took more than 2 hours. What's the matter? Li Ruotai felt that the elder sister's tone was not right, and she was much more careful in her tone of voice. No, it's okay. Li Ruobing was a little dumbfounded. Sister, are you okay? Li Ruotai didn't know what was going on, and his tone was more cautious. It's okay. I'll hang up now, Li Ruobing said and hung up. She was standing at the edge of the desk, clutching her mobile phone, her back was facing Wu Chen, her face was very excited. She was annoyed at being teased, but also relaxed with a sense of relief. It was very complicated. Wu Chen was still that mysterious Wu Chen. He didn't do the kind of thing that Li Ruobing seemed to be driven by desire and was very cheap. Are you kidding me? Li Ruobing turned around to look at Wu Chen and asked. What are you playing with? Wu Chen pretended to be stupid. Li Ruobing knew from Wu Chen's expression that he was deliberately played by Wu Chen. You are so boring, Li Ruobing said. After speaking, Li Ruobing put the phone on the table, and then walked quickly to Wu Chen. Thump. Kneel down. Knees together, kneeling right in front of Wu Chen. I was wrong, I'm sorry. Li Ruobing knelt with her back straight, looked up at Wu Chen, and spoke in a dignified tone. This kneeling actually made her kneel like the heroism in the novel when she denounced the court before the hero was beheaded. After apologizing, Li Ruobing stood up without any pause. While walking back, she couldn't help muttering, how can there be such a boring person like you? When she walked back to the table to put on her shoes, she turned her back to Wu Chen and said, do you want to have dinner together? That's right, Tai just called and said that someone is checking on you, the Su family of Jinfu Group, do you know who it is? Talking to Wu Chen in a very normal tone, as if it wasn't her who knelt down to apologize to Wu Chen just now. Chapter 66. Do you want to make another bet? The Su family, Wu Chen smiled, a little strangely. Of course he knew who was checking him, of course it was Su Qingying. After Wu Chen ran into her motorcade on the road yesterday afternoon, he sent her a text message. He could imagine the panic in her heart. He guessed she must have not slept well last night. Wu Chen's mobile phone number was registered with his real name. With the Su family's powerful contacts, it could be said that it took minutes to check Wu Chen's family background and other basic information. But obviously, Su Qingying not only checked his basic information. After all, it was impossible to drive a Lamborghini with that kind of family background. It should be to check Wu Chen's personal connections in Donghai, to check more detailed background information. What? You don't know? Li Ruobing asked after putting on her high heels. How would one know if they were being investigated? But Li Ruobing just felt that Wu Chen should know. Because he was an intelligence businessman. He always seemed to know everything. I know. Wu Chen smiled. Who is checking you? Li Ruobing asked. This is none of your business. Wu Chen smiled at Li Ruobing, as if he didn't want to tell her, and said, you'd better leave it alone. Wu Chen didn't want to, but during his contact with Su Qingying, there were twists and turns. Who cares about you? Do you think I'm so free? Li Ruobing replied to Wu Chen. She went to the hanger in the corner again, put on a small suit jacket, and said at the same time, there is a new Italian restaurant in New Century, do you want to try it? Let's go. Wu Chen agreed and stood up. After putting on her coat, Li Ruobing tidied herself in the mirror. Seeing Wu Chen walking behind her, she turned around again and raised her hand to tidy up Wu Chen's neckline. Through the mirror, she noticed Wu Chen's irregular neckline. She seems to be looking for a feeling, the feeling of being a girlfriend. In this way, when the two go out together, no flaws will be exposed. Do you feel comfortable kneeling down to a man who is 5 years younger than you, has an ordinary family background, and is not as rich as you? Wu Chen asked Li Ruobing softly with a smile. His tone was calm, but his words were very irritating. Still comfortable. Li Ruobing's hand that was fixing Wu Chen's tie suddenly paused for 2 seconds, and then she smiled. Her smile was bright. Are you provoking me on purpose? Li Ruobing raised her head slightly and smiled beautifully. Li Ruobing was already tall, and she was a little shorter than Wu Chen wearing high heels. No, it's not. Wu Chen denied it, and smiled again. I just want to interview you. You know that in our line of work, we must study people and understand people's hearts, so I especially want to know. On surface, it seems like you just turned your head and forgot about it, but what are you thinking in your heart? Wu Chen was provoking her, but he just didn't admit it. Li Ruobing's eyelids twitched. She suddenly pulled Wu Chen's tie, leaned forward, raised her head and almost touched Wu Chen's face, with a smile on her face but asked with a gloomy gaze, Wu Chen, do you think I can't do anything to you? Huh. I didn't say that. Feeling Li Ruobing's breath, Wu Chen still smiled calmly. You are not in love with me, are you? Li Ruobing asked. She felt very witty, and showed a surprised and teasing smile. "Don't be sentimental," Wu Chen said with a light smile. "Really?" Li Ruobing seemed to see through him. "Then you clearly know that I don't want to mention that matter. Why did you take the initiative to mention it to me? Do you want me to pay more attention to you, or? You have already. I'm your fake boyfriend, we meet every day, do you need to pay more attention to me?" Wu Chen interrupted Li Ruobing. "You are neither the prettiest nor the richest woman I know, and you have a frigid face every day and an aura that no strangers should approach you. Even cats hide from you. Where did you get your confidence? Do you think I will fall in love with you?" Li Ruobing's eyelids twitched. Wu Chen's words were really ugly. Wu Chen would never tell Li Ruobing that he had specially practiced debating and pissing people off. This was part of eloquence, and a person's eloquence was extremely important to Wu Chen. When communicating with people, eloquence was really important. To put it nicely, it made people feel comfortable and happy. If you say something ugly, you could provoke the other party's nerves and change the other party's mood, and can stimulate the other party's rebellious psychology. Li Ruobing was really angry. "Listening to you, you have a lot of women. All of them are great beauties, right?" Li Ruobing wanted to fight back against Wu Chen. Although Wu Chen helped her a lot these days, she was angry now. If it didn't go well, Wu Chen would be overwhelmed. She separated the important from the personal. When it came to major issues and the overall situation, she naturally wanted to stand on the united front with Wu Chen. Li Ruotai gave Wu Chen a house worth 100 million yuan, and she also felt that he should give it. There was nothing wrong with it, Wu Chen deserved it. But she also felt that she had a personal grievance with Wu Chen, and she had to settle it. Li Ruobing didn't realize at all that she, who was always calm and cold, would have such a big emotional fluctuation because of Wu Chen's few words of provocation. "Women, I have slept with quite a few in the past, but now, it's okay," Wu Chen smiled again after speaking. "They're all prettier than me?" Li Ruobing asked again. "Of course there is someone more beautiful than you." Wu Chen kept smiling. "Who? Give me an example. I'll check to see if she's prettier than me." Li Ruobing said absolutely. She had deliberately misinterpreted Wu Chen's meaning before. When Wu Chen said, "a woman she knew," she directly misinterpreted it as, Wu Chen's woman. Wu Chen didn't even bother to correct her, because it had unknowingly developed to the point where Li Ruobing would get angry and bicker with him. There was no need to correct it, it's better to just follow along and see what else she would say. Then, now Li Ruobing really stopped Wu Chen. Because after the start of his new life, Wu Chen only slept with Mu Qianchen, and Mu Qianchen and Li Ruobing were of a different type, and she did not surpass Li Ruobing in appearance. "You're prying into my privacy, I won't be fooled." Wu Chen chuckled. "Can't you tell?" Li Ruobing smiled, and deliberately ran on Wu Chen. "Hearing that you speak so loudly, I thought you were so powerful. I almost thought that even Su Qingying was your woman. She's even prettier than me. You are not afraid of the wind flashing your tongue." Li Ruobing just mentioned Su Qingying. This made Wu Chen stunned for a moment. He subconsciously thought that Li Ruobing knew something and found something, but he immediately overturned this idea. It was impossible. So she suddenly mentioned Su Qingying. Wu Chen understood after thinking about it for a while. It might be because the two mentioned the Su family of the Jinfu group before, and because they mentioned it, it was easy to subconsciously think of her first. In addition, Su Qingying was really famous. For Li Ruobing in Donghai, everyone in the business circle knew about her, but few people outside the business circle knew about her. Her business style was very low-key. But Su Qingying, in the entire East China Sea, was almost to the point where no one not know about her. Among the general public, she was even more famous than her father. Ordinary people might not be able to say the name of the boss of Jinfu Group, but they could basically tell the name of the boss's only daughter. Because she was not only the daughter of the richest man in the East China Sea, the first daughter of the East China Sea, etc., she also had the title of the most beautiful woman in the East China Sea. Li Ruobing had been in Donghai for 4 years, so she naturally understood it. And Wu Chen also said before that among the women he knew, Li Ruobing was not the most beautiful, nor was she the richest. The combination of many factors caused Li Ruobing to subconsciously think of the number one beauty in the East China Sea. In Donghai, Su Qingying might really be the only woman who met the requirements. Li Ruobing's own conditions were already extremely high. Those who were richer than her were not as beautiful as her, and those who were prettier than her, she had never seen a few prettier than her. In Donghai, she had only seen one, and that is Su Qingying. Only Su Qingying was prettier and richer than her. After all, she was the sole heir of Jinfu Group. At present, Su Qingying had more personal assets than Li Ruobing. Of course, when Li Ruobing mentioned Su Qingying, he just thought of mentioning it in passing, to squeeze Wu Chen. But Wu Chen thought about it. Su Qingying. Wu Chen smiled and said, "She's not my woman yet." Yet, Li Ruobing immediately discovered the problem in Wu Chen's words. Yes, for the time being. Wu Chen took it for granted, not for the time being, but in a few days, she may be. You don't believe me? Do you want to make another bet? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 67. The Legend of the First Beauty of the Eastern Sea. Another bet. Li Ruobing's eyelids twitched when she heard the bet again. She had only lost to Wu Chen, and it was because she didn't believe in Wu Chen's ability that she lost miserably. Kneeling down to apologize, only a few minutes passed. The two of them were talking hurriedly, but Wu Chen actually raised a bet again. The current Li Ruobing was really convinced by Wu Chen's personal ability and connections. But what happened this time obviously had nothing to do with connections. Because Li Ruobing just found out that someone from the Su family was investigating Wu Chen, it was certain that they did not know Wu Chen. Even if they know each other, they must be unfamiliar, otherwise it would be impossible to mobilize so much energy to investigate Wu Chen's background, and even be noticed by Li Ruotai, who had the densest network of contacts. Not even to mention whether Wu Chen knew the Su family or not. Just say they knew each other. Not only did they know each other, but it could even be assumed that Wu Chen and Su Qingying grew up together. The two have known each other since childhood and were good friends. Even with such a premise, Li Ruobing still felt that Wu Chen was farting. This time, it's not that Li Ruobing didn't believe in Wu Chen, but that she believed in Su Qingying and the Su family. Su Qingying was an existence that no one not know. The title of the number one beauty in the East China Sea was not for nothing. Although Li Ruobing, the Li family, and even Li Ruotai had nothing to do with the Jinfu Su family, the main reason was that the Jinfu group was in the business of gold, silver and jewelry, and the Su family had very few members, so they were not considered a group. Whether it was in business or other aspects, it was difficult for the two parties to have contact. It couldn't be said that they didn't know each other at all, but they really didn't have any interests or entanglements in connections. But Li Ruobing knew Su Qingying well, and she could be said to have heard a lot about Su Qingying. Su Qingying's father, Su Ruiwen, the richest man in the East China Sea, was a poor boy in his early years. He started out at the age of 17 or 18, traveling all over the world, doing a lot of business, most of which ended in failure, but he also accumulated rich experience, and finally started from a small jade shop. Su Ruiwen seemed to be a businessman by nature, and he had a tenacious personality, getting more courageous as he got frustrated, and very brave. In the early days of Jinfu Company's development, he even took people to the Burmese jade mine in person. At that time, the place was very chaotic, and he could be said to have risked his life to get the first-hand goods supply at the lowest price. Perhaps because he was too focused on business, Su Ruiwen got married very late. And when his daughter Su Qingying was born, Su Ruiwen was already a wealthy man. At that time, Jinfu Company was already the largest chain jewelry company in East China. Therefore, Su Qingying was born with a halo. Su Ruiwen's wife, also known as Su Qingying's mother, was a daughter of a high-ranking cadre and a woman from a family of intellectuals. When she married Su Ruiwen, she was a university teacher. Affected by family wealth and mother's education, Su Qingying could be said to have behaved differently from ordinary children since she was a child. Well-behaved, sensible, excellent grades, and extremely polite. The Su family's tutoring was very strict. This made Su Qingying extremely educated since she was a child. She was the kind of excellent girl who had been very good at school since she was a child. She had been the first in the exams. She was bored studying at home during the summer vacation and did not go out to play with her friends. Although she was excellent, she had lost her childhood. It was said that when she was very young, under the guidance of her family, she had a clear plan for her future. When she was in junior high school, she helped her family design several jewelry, and achieved good sales. She was talked about by people. While studying abroad, she even successfully established her own luxury brand in the United States, and personally represented her brand on the catwalk. Luxury goods and jewelry were connected, and expensive diamond bracelets were luxury goods. Therefore, when Su Qingying established a luxury brand abroad, it was a small test, and it was a preparation for inheriting the family business in the future. Su Qingying had high hopes since she was born. Because she was the only child of Su Ruiwen and his wife. In the past few years in the East China Sea, Li Ruobing heard too many legends related to Su Qingying, the most famous of which was the incident that Su Ruiwen almost publicly recruited a son-in-law 2 years ago. Su Qingying was the same age as Li Ruobing. She was also 27 years old this year, but her birthday was earlier than Li Ruobing, so she is considered older. As for Su Ruiwen, he was already 56 years old this year. In fact, he was not too old. It was not a problem to live another 10 or 20 years normally. However, Su Ruiwen's physical condition had always been poor. He worked too hard for the Jinfu group these years and had a lot of entertainment. He had a major operation in the hospital the year before last, so he let his daughter take over. He was afraid that if he suddenly failed, and his daughter hadn't completely controlled the company, there would be trouble. 2 years ago, when Su Qingying was 25 years old. Not long after Su Ruiwen underwent major surgery and was discharged safely. The Su family began to arrange blind dates for Su Qingying. That's right, Su Qingying actually needed a blind date. Because the family was too strict with her before, she had never been in a relationship, nor would she know how to fall in love, and men of the same age could not approach her at all. Even when she was studying abroad, her mother sent people to watch her, for fear that she would be caught. The atmosphere outside was spoiled. This situation made it impossible for Su Qingying to have a man by her side. At the beginning, they strictly guarded against letting Su Qingying fall in love. When Su Qingying was 25, the Su family was in a hurry again. 25 years old was not young. Many girls would be urged to marry. Even Li Ruobing, if she hadn't resisted, she would have married Ding Ruolong at the age of 23. Of course, the Su family's sudden eagerness to get Su Qingying married had a lot to do with Su Ruiwen's physical condition. The blind date arranged for Su Qingying did not go well. Of course, it's not that Su Qingying's conditions were not good, but that her conditions were too good, and the other conditions offered by the Su family were too harsh. First of all, it had to be someone that Su Qingying could like. If she didn't like him, there would be big problems in the future. The Su family still respected her opinion. Secondly, those whose family assets were less than 1 billion couldn't even see Su Qingying. They must be more than 1 billion. Then, it didn't matter if you were too young or too old, but they must be in good health. They could look normal, but not too ugly. Besides, the blind date must be a young talent. That was to say, not only was their family talented, but he must be talented too. So that he could be able to help Su Qingying run the company. Finally, it was also the most important and the most unacceptable one: marriage. To marry Su Qingying, one must enter the Su family. Once they had a child in the future, it would be named Su. Taking this condition alone, they would definitely be able to find a suitable one. After all, Su Qingying's appearance and family background were top-notch. But if you look at it in combination with other conditions, it was almost impossible. Those that had the ability, which man was willing to marry? Even if there was a man who was capable and willing to marry, his family would definitely not agree to it. They would become a joke in the circle. It's not a matter of how much money. It's about the face. But the Su family's requirement for a son-in-law was that he had the ability, background, good health, good looks, and willingness to marry into the family. These conditions, except for the one of being married, which was set by Su Ruiwen, the others were set by Su Qingying's mother. No one could change it. It almost became a farce. At the beginning, some people didn't know the conditions of the Su family, and almost broke the threshold of the Su family. After the news spread, no one went. Ordinary people couldn't go, and extraordinary people, none of them would go. The family was also very rich and powerful, so if he became the son-in-law, then he was crazy. Afterwards, there was Su Ruiwen's talk about recruiting a son-in-law, but within a few days of this rumor, Su Ruiwen denied the matter of recruiting relatives in public. Then it all stopped. Until today, Su Qingying was still single, and there were no scandals. It's a bet, Li Ruobing said to Wu Chen after repeatedly thinking about various possibilities. Chapter 68. Don't think I'm dirty. Li Ruobing was a real hothead. But she really thought it through this time, and thought about all kinds of possibilities and assumptions, but no matter how she thought about it, it was impossible. She even guessed whether Wu Chen would be connected with Su Ruiwen. Even under this assumption, she felt that impossible. There were 3 core reasons. 1. The Su family would never make concessions, the son-in-law must follow their standards. 2. Although Su Qingying was a strong woman, she was also a good girl. She listened to her family very much. She had been disciplined too much since she was a child, and she had long been submissive. It was impossible for her to resist her family. 3. The most important point. Wu Chen, absolute, won't marry. Li Ruobing not only had confidence in the Su family, she also had confidence in Wu Chen. How could a man like Wu Chen, who was extremely capable, and never bowed his head, marry into her family? She knew that Wu Chen liked the feeling of being in control of everything. She knew that Wu Chen would not be in a hurry when facing any situation, and would not bow down to any person, marry into her family. No way. You really bet with me again? Wu Chen grinned, showing a mouthful of small white teeth. He thought that Li Ruobing would gain wisdom after thinking for so long, but unexpectedly she agreed. Gambling. Is there anything I dare not bet on? Li Ruobing said. I'm afraid you will lose again, have a mental breakdown, and doubt life. Wu Chen smiled. You're just having a nervous breakdown. Stop talking nonsense. Li Ruobing tugged Wu Chen's tie again, then let it go, flattened the tie twice with her hand, looked up at Wu Chen and said, let's talk about the specific rules and bets. I'm afraid you won't be able to accept my request. Wu Chen said. So confident. What relationship do you have with the Su family now? It's okay, we don't know each other yet. Then what are you talking about? Are you afraid? Did you just say it because you think I wouldn't dare to bet with you? Bet. Come on, talk. You really don't have a good memory, Boss Li. Speak. Okay. In 3 days, I'll make Su Qingying my woman, the one that will be with me for the rest of my life. I'll give you 30 days. No, 3 days is enough. Yes, you are amazing. Let me see what you will say in 3 days. What about the bet? Say yours first. If you lose, I want you to kneel down and apologize to me. Li Ruobing pointed to the ground and said. She just wanted to get back. Making her kneel once, she also wanted to make Wu Chen kneel once. No problem. Wu Chen smiled. What about your conditions? Li Ruobing asked immediately. My conditions. Wu Chen moved his shoulders with a long voice, and shook his neck again, as if flexing his muscles and bones, then put his hand on Li Ruobing's shoulder, leaned forward, and said next to Li Ruobing's ear, I need you to help me, 100 times, anytime, how about it? 100 times? Li Ruobing asked with squinting eyes. If you find it troublesome, forget it. Let's not gamble if you don't want to gamble. Wu Chen said, as if he really didn't want to gamble with Li Ruobing. No trouble, I'll bet. If I lose, I'll do that. Li Ruobing said immediately. The bet was made. The two went out together. When they walked out of Li Ruobing's office together, Li Ruobing was already smiling, holding Wu Chen's hand, looking bright and in a good mood. No one saw any flaw, anyone who saw them would think that the two were passionately in love lovers. They went to eat lunch. 20 minutes later, the two came to Donghai New Century Plaza, which was one of several bustling commercial streets in Donghai. Li Ruobing mentioned the new Italian restaurant before. Here it was. Wu Chen also ate at this restaurant before. Although it had only been open for half a month, Wu Chen stayed in reincarnation for 1,000 years on July 7th. This Western restaurant that could still bring freshness to Li Ruobing was very interesting to Wu Chen. The taste was really good. The facade of this restaurant was small, but the space inside was very large, and there were tables outside the door. Just under the parasols, there were so many tables, plus the decoration style, the overall feeling was that you were on vacation in a foreign country. It was a nice weather. The two chose a table directly outside the door, sat under the parasol, and felt quite comfortable when the breeze blew. They randomly ordered some beef with tuna sauce, pasta, seafood soup, and salad, and the two chatted casually while waiting for the meal. In fact, Wu Chen and Li Ruobing didn't need to eat together every day, they were just pretending to be a couple, but if Wu Chen had time and Li Ruobing had time, then the two of them should eat together. They also must go to public places to eat. That's how true it was. However, the two of them didn't intend to run into some wealthy boss today to expand their influence, but to have lunch together, so they chose this place as a random choice. It was very difficult to meet those top rich businessmen here. It's not that the quality was not enough, but that the local super rich were all in their 40s and 50s, so they didn't have the habit of eating Western food. Besides, Western restaurants were not a place suitable for receiving customers. If they liked to eat, their customers might not like it, so it's not safe. No one bothered, and it was difficult for anyone to know Li Ruobing here, so Li Ruobing was very relaxed. I really have to thank you very much. The contract was signed very smoothly, and the endorsement fee is very low. Oh yes. Li Ruobing took out her mobile phone and quickly operated it. Jingle. Wu Chen received a text message here, and his account received 20 million. Thank you, Boss Li. Wu Chen looked at his phone and said with a smile. The two of them have come to this point, and he still called Li Ruobing Boss Li. Li Ruobing was starting to feel a little uncomfortable. Could you please don't call me Boss Li, we are so familiar, and there are so many people here, if someone we know hears about it, we'll be in trouble. Okay, Ruobing, Wu Chen said, laughing again. Excuse me, it was the restaurant waiter who came over and brought drinks first. The two didn't order wine, they ordered fruit juice, watermelon juice and orange juice. The waiter put down the 2 glasses of juice and walked away. Li Ruobing picked up the big glass of orange juice, took a sip with the straw in his mouth, and then frowned. Wu Chen, who took a sip of watermelon juice, noticed Li Ruobing's expression and asked, "What's wrong?" "It's too sour, try it," Li Ruobing said, and handed the orange juice to Wu Chen. Wu Chen took it and tasted it with the straw. It was indeed very sour. He knew that the orange juice here was very sour, and he also knew that Li Ruobing didn't like too sour. "It's sour, you drink this." Wu Chen put down the orange juice, picked up a large glass of watermelon juice, and handed it to Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing took it, took a sip of watermelon juice with the straw and looked very satisfied. "The straw I used, didn't you think I'm dirty?" Wu Chen asked with a smile. Chapter 69. Cheating on the old scumbag. Dirty. We are a couple, is there a problem? Li Ruobing replied, then turned her head to look at the crowded square and muttered, "It's not like we haven't kissed." That's right. Li Ruobing seemed to have remembered. Sei sat up straight suddenly, pressed her elbows on the table, leaned closer and said in a low voice, "I sent someone to your county yesterday." Huh, Wu Chen was taken aback. Ding Ruolong will know you sooner or later. Your family may be threatened. I have someone protect them. I will protect them secretly so as not to disturb their lives. Ding Ruolong doesn't have many contacts in Donghai. If he sends someone, I will definitely know in advance. Tai and I will be notified, there will be no problem. Wu Chen was a little surprised. Unexpectedly, Li Ruobing arranged it directly. Regarding the issue of protecting his family from harm, Wu Chen had thought about it. He was not in a hurry, because Ding Ruolong would not be so fast, and he was still thinking about which network he would use to arrange it once he had more contacts. It might not be Li Ruobing. But since Li Ruobing already arranged it, and she initiated it, it was great. You have a heart. Wu Chen also pressed his elbows on the table, and leaned forward, so that he could get closer and speak in a lower voice. Wu Chen asked Li Ruobing for the details, how it was arranged. This matter really could be sloppy. Although Wu Chen had the ability to reset time, even if his family really has an accident one day, he could still reset the day, but he still didn't want his family to be hurt, even if he could reset it. In the previous millennium reincarnation, Wu Chen went home too many times. Every time he found a different time to go back, so that the meeting time was different, the first sentence was different, and the words he said afterwards were also different. He once pinned his hope of not being crazy on his family. But it didn't work out. It's useless at all. It's not a family problem, but a repetitive problem. No matter how he changed the time point, the family's daily life would be the same, and it would generally not change, so in essence, it was still repetitive. Repeating too many times and one would get bored, and boredom would drive you crazy. Wu Chen and Li Ruobing got closer and whispering like real young couples. Suddenly, the sound of a man talking loudly appeared. Baby, what do you think of this place? It's newly opened. It's Italian food. I ate her last week. It tastes authentic. Have you ever eaten Western food before? A young girl with heavy makeup and heavy perfume was standing at the door of the restaurant and gesticulating. Okay, let's eat here. I haven't eaten Italian food in a restaurant yet, let's sit outside. The girl with heavy makeup was very happy, and her voice was very greasy. The two sat down next door. They were also very loud when ordering, and the man waved his hand proudly, saying something loudly and ordering casually. After ordering the meal, the two were still talking very loudly. The girl with heavy makeup suddenly asked the middle-aged man, "You said you came here a week ago, why didn't I know? Did you come with your yellow-faced woman? Didn't you say you were going to get a divorce?" The middle-aged man hurriedly coaxed with an explanation, "Baby, listen to me, we are going to get a divorce, but delaying is unavoidable. There are still property issues that have not been resolved, so we can't divorce now. Keep your voice down, don't talk about this." "Humph, you say that every time. Don't be angry, baby, I'll get you a bag later." The guests outside the restaurant understood that the old man was a cheating old scumbag. Wu Chen and Li Ruobing also frowned from the quarrel. Loud noise in public, there was no quality at all. The two were whispering about the arrangements for Wu Chen's family, which involved a lot of content that should not be heard by others, not even strangers, but now that they had such a quarrel, they couldn't hear what the other party was saying clearly. Li Ruobing sat up straight and looked back. Wu Chen also sat up straight. He didn't need to turn his head, because those two people were behind Li Ruobing, opposite him. When the two of them came to sit down, he saw their faces directly. He knew that handsome fat middle-aged man was very rich. Wu Chen not only knew them, but also knew that the old man was bragging just now and would not get a divorce. He just lied to the little girl. He wouldn't dare to get a divorce if he gave him 800 courage. "Excuse me, can you please keep your voice down? It will affect everyone's meal." Li Ruobing looked back and said in a cold voice. She wouldn't look for trouble, but if it really affected her, she wouldn't let it go. "Who the hell are you? The restaurant belongs to your family. I want you." The middle-aged man raised his head and scolded. The anger directly turned into a smile. "I'm sorry, beauty, let's keep our voices down. Please, everyone, I'm sorry." He not only apologized to Li Ruobing, but also stood up and apologized to the guests at several tables outside. A very educated look. If he didn't look at Li Ruobing with lecherous eyes, he would be able to correct his mistakes. But he changed his face just because Li Ruobing was good-looking, and because he had seen a certain height. The eyes betrayed him. Li Ruobing was too lazy to talk to him, turned around to look at Wu Chen, took a sip of watermelon juice. The handsome middle-aged man apologized and sat down, but the girl with heavy makeup was angered. "What beauty, who are you looking at?" the girl with heavy makeup said in a fit of temper. "I didn't look at anything, baby, it's our fault for disturbing others. Don't you talk like that all the time. You're crazy, why do you pretend to be a gentleman when you see a good-looking woman? Did you fall in love with her?" "I didn't. I love you baby the most, other women are trash in my eyes." "Really? Then why are you talking so quietly? Are you going to chase her?" "When did I keep quiet? Stop making trouble, okay?" the handsome middle-aged man shouted loudly again, looking angry. The girl with heavy makeup froze all of a sudden, and didn't dare to say any more. She turned her head and ignored him. It seemed to be a cold war. "Baby, don't be angry, the food is about to be served." The handsome middle-aged man coaxed again. "You just fell in love with that coquettish fox, right?" The girl with heavy makeup turned her head and said, then glanced at Li Ruobing's back and said, "Don't look at that person. She's dressed like a dog, she probably sells houses as an intermediary. I wonder how many clients she's slept with. Really, you want to pick up all the rags." When the girl with heavy makeup said this, her eyes were full of jealousy as she looked at Li Ruobing's back. Li Ruobing was about to be annoyed to death, but when the girl with heavy makeup finished speaking, she stood up abruptly. At the same time as she got up, the bodyguard not far away also stood up and walked quickly to the door of the restaurant. Li Ruobing held the watermelon juice cup, but didn't pick it up. Because Wu Chen held down her hand. Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen. "I'll do it." Wu Chen didn't say anything. He smiled and gestured to Li Ruobing. After finishing speaking, he took out his mobile phone with the other hand, and skillfully entered the content of the text message with one hand. "Your husband is dating the mistress, and the address is." He entered an unfamiliar number again, and then sent it. Done. Wait for the show. Maybe it's because he knew too many people and things. Wu Chen felt that he could establish contacts in any place and through anything. It was the same this time. The handsome middle-aged man's wife was a middle-aged strong woman. Personally speaking, she could only be regarded as a top-level network, similar to the dormant Lei Cheng, but this woman's family was extremely powerful in Donghai. Chapter 70. Retaliation. Just use the most refreshing way. After sending the text message, Wu Chen gave Li Ruobing a wink. Li Ruobing took a deep breath, and sat down again. Although she didn't know how Wu Chen would fight back, Li Ruobing, who had been keeping a low profile since coming to Donghai, really didn't want to conflict with others in public. Disrespectful. Faced with such a thing as being bitten by a dog, of course Li Ruobing would not bite back, she would either avoid it or beat her to death. If there was a real conflict, she would never suffer. After Li Ruobing sat down, several bodyguards who were approaching in a hurry stopped in their tracks. Li Ruobing held the juice cup and raised it slightly. "Pa," standing up to scare others but not even having the courage to come over. The girl with heavy makeup behind said again. In fact, she was frightened just now. The moment Li Ruobing stood up suddenly, she was frightened. Impulse was invisible, but it could be felt. The girl with heavy makeup thought that Li Ruobing was coming to beat her, and was so frightened that she hid in the middle-aged man's arms, but she didn't expect Li Ruobing to sit down again. "Don't be afraid baby, no one dares to touch you. Not even if we give her courage." The handsome middle-aged man patted the heavily made-up girl on the back and said loudly on purpose. He wanted to save face. It didn't matter, he must protect the girl with heavy makeup. "TCH, you still stand up to scare people, you don't dare to come over, what are you pretending to be?" The girl with heavy makeup was still muttering. Li Ruobing was really angered. She regretted it all. Why did she have to eat outside? She used to go to the private room alone to ask for some peace and quiet, but today she came with Wu Chen and was at outside. Wu Chen was still pressing Li Ruobing's hand, and didn't let go. He really didn't want Li Ruobing to splash juice on people's faces, and for her bodyguards rushed over and beat them all to death. Afterwards, Li Ruotai would get news and bring people over to do something. Li Ruobing wouldn't suffer a loss. Of course, Wu Chen wouldn't let Li Ruobing swallow his anger, but that would be boring, not fun at all. Revenge. Just use the most refreshing way. Look, that man, he looks like a student. Even if his girlfriend is scared, he doesn't even dare to say a word, coward. The voice of the woman with heavy makeup came again. Wu Chen pretended not to hear it, and patted the back of Li Ruobing's hand again, then took it away and said, "Let's talk about something interesting. Tell me, why do you think that woman is not easy to take down? A few days, is it really not enough?" The words were very vague, and others thought they were talking about outsiders. Li Ruobing understood. He was talking about Su Qingying. She didn't know why Wu Chen suddenly said this in public. Li Ruobing also wanted to divert her attention, so as not to hear the voices of those two people. She said, "The conditions offered by the other party are too harsh. No man will agree to it." "Where is it harsh? Isn't it just to be a door-to-door son-in-law? There are many people who are willing to do so these days," Wu Chen said with a smile. Li Ruobing's complexion suddenly changed. Wu Chen actually said such a thing. Was he willing to be the door-to-door son-in-law? Wu Chen raised an eyebrow at Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing seemed to understand something again. A door-to-door son-in-law. Li Ruobing sneered and said, "Any man with such a little bit of ambition, no. As long as he is still a man, it is impossible to be a door-to-door son-in-law. What you said is wrong, right? Women can marry into men, why can't men marry into women? What about equality between men and women?" Wu Chen said. "It's not the same thing." Li Ruobing immediately retorted. "A woman marries a man, as long as the man is not bad, the family will also spoil her. No one is inferior to anyone else." Li Ruobing debated with Wu Chen for several minutes on the issue of equality between men and women. Then turned again to the question of the door-to-door son-in-law. What's the matter with a man getting married into the woman's family? Only those who are incompetent, greedy for money and can't marry a wife, would choose to be a door-to-door son-in-law, right? Do you think any woman doesn't like getting married into the man's family? Who doesn't like a big man? A man who gets married is as good as a dog. Who in the family wouldn't roll their eyes? I'm afraid they will be stabbed in the back in their hometown for the rest of their lives. Marriage itself is not wrong. It's a personal choice. He is willing to let his children and his wife's surnames be his generosity, and we don't care. But to be a dog for someone else, the pet dog at home is ranked third, and he can only be ranked fourth. Swallowing your pride and marrying for money, for having a woman, living without even dignity. This kind of man lives well." Li Ruobing was expressing her true thoughts. She looked down on women who endured domestic violence and never divorced, and men who married meekly. As a woman, she hoped that women could improve themselves, and that men live more like men. "It makes sense for you to say that. That's right. A man who is married into her spouse's family is worse than a dog, especially the kind who doesn't even want the most basic dignity for money. It's better to die." Wu Chen seemed to be persuaded by Li Ruobing. Boom! Suddenly there was a loud noise behind Li Ruobing, and it was the handsome middle-aged man who smashed the big glass of juice that had just been served. Judging from his face, it could be said that he was furious, and his whole face was flushed red. "Did I embarrass you? Who are you talking about here?" The handsome middle-aged man who dropped his juice glass suddenly got up and cursed. His whole body was already angered. He thought he was recognized, and they deliberately talking about him. He was right. Wu Chen did it on purpose. Wu Chen knew that he was a door-to-door son-in-law. And it's really the kind that ranked behind dogs in the family. So the conversation between Wu Chen and Li Ruobing just now was extremely harsh to him, and it went straight to his heart. Wu Chen pressed Li Ruobing's hand again, then stood up and said, "Who are you scolding? Why are you so excited? We say that the door-to-door son-in-law is a dog, does it have anything to do with you? Are you a door-to-door son-in-law? Are you?" Wu Chen said super loudly with a smile. The guests at the nearby tables all turned their heads and looked sideways, and they all heard it. Even the guests at the tables near the door in the restaurant heard it, and they all looked out the window. The handsome middle-aged man was choked suddenly, his face flushed like a red balloon, and he couldn't speak a word. Admit in public that he was a door-to-door son-in-law. That would be really embarrassing. But Wu Chen was scolding him. "Endure. Are you a door-to-door son-in-law?" The girl with heavy makeup turned her head and asked in disbelief. She knew that the handsome middle-aged man had a wife. He said it himself, and he also said that he was getting divorced. He delayed because of property issues. He said that he would marry her after the divorce. But he didn't say he was married into his wife's family. Marrying into the woman's family and demanding a divorce. Also divide the property. He could only divide fart. I'm not. The handsome middle-aged man denied with a sullen face. Then why are you excited? It has nothing to do with you. I was shocked. I thought you were the kind of man who would go to someone's house and be a dog. Yes. If you don't admit it, then it's nothing to do with you. While Wu Chen spoke, he tapped the phone screen on the table in the house, paying attention to the time. She should be here. The company of the middle-aged strong woman was not far from here. This handsome middle-aged man came out to meet his lover during his lunch break, so naturally he couldn't be too far away from the company. He had often done this before, so Wu Chen could deduce it. What the hell? The handsome middle-aged man's lungs were about to explode, his eyes seemed to tear Wu Chen alive. At this time, beep beep, there was a loud car horn. This Western restaurant was on the side of the square, so cars were not allowed, but there were a few black commercial vehicles, honking their horns to remind passers-by to avoid, and they drive over directly. The car stopped on the side. All the doors opened at the same time, and a group of more than a dozen bodyguards in black suits got out of the car. In the middle, a fat middle-aged woman in her 40s with a shawl got out. Although she was fat, this woman had a strong aura, a very strong aura. Compared with Li Ruobing, she lacked sharpness and brilliance, but she had more thickness. Seeing this situation, the handsome middle-aged man immediately turned pale and lost all blood. He sat back in fright. Wu Chen also sat down, smiled and gave Li Ruobing a look. The fun begins. Chapter 71. The Rich Woman and the White Boy. Chapter 71. The Rich Woman and the White Boy. Chapter 71. The Rich Woman and the White Boy. The handsome middle-aged man with a fair face was frightened and dumbfounded. The moment he saw the middle-aged lady, he was dumbfounded. The middle-aged lady got out of the car and stared straight at him. Her face was calm and her eyes were murderous. She walked towards the table, surrounded by more than a dozen bodyguards. Everyone present could see that something was wrong. Li Ruobing looked sideways and saw the middle-aged lady with a little surprise on her face, because she knew this woman, and she was also one of the earliest local businessmen she met after she came to East China Sea. Zhan Xiame, 45 years old, chairman of Donghai Gaifeng Group, owner of Donghai Chow Chow Club, vice president of Donghai Chamber of Commerce, director general of Donghai Entrepreneurs Association. Currently, her personal net worth was around 1 billion. If we only talk about wealth, Zhan Xiame's personal assets were not ranked high in Donghai, and she was not among the top 10 richest people in Donghai. But her position in the East China Sea business circle was very special. Her father, Zhan Jiani, was one of the first batch of patriotic overseas Chinese businessmen who returned to China to invest after the reform, and restored their nationality in the early 1980s. He was the founder and first president of the East China Sea Chamber of Commerce, and also the first president of the East China Sea Entrepreneurs Association. Over the years of business development, made an indelible and important contribution. Zhan Jiani served as a deputy to the National People's Congress for 2 terms and a member of the CPPCC National Committee for 1 term. However, he was almost 80 years old and had retired long ago. But he still had titles such as the honorary head of the East China Sea Chamber of Commerce and the honorary head of the East China Sea Entrepreneurs Association. Zhan Jiani had 5 children in his life. The eldest son was almost 60 years old and was the main heir of the family business. However, for the better development of the family business, he already moved the company headquarters to the capital. Zhan Jiani's second and fourth sons both embarked on official careers, and the fourth son developed the best. He was currently serving as the mayor of a city in the northwest. He was not yet 50 years old. The third child and the fifth child were both girls, and the third child was married long ago, to the son of Zhan Jiani's old friend, and currently lived in the United States. The fifth child was Zan Xiame. Of Zan Jiani's 5 children, currently only Zan Xiame was by his side. Although Zan Xiame did not inherit the family business, she started doing business with the support of her family when she was in her 20s, and she embarked on her own path as a strong woman. Li Ruobing knew Zan Xiame 4 years ago. In Donghai, although the Zan family did not have the absolute power to speak as before after the separation, it was still the most prestigious family in Donghai. Not the most money, but definitely the most prestigious. As long as Zan Jiani was alive, this would not change. When Li Ruobing first came to the East China Sea, she and Li Ruotai visited Zan Jiani. They meant to pay homage to the top of the mountain, but they didn't want the Zan family to help. They just went to greet and say hello as a junior, so as not to be troubled later. Zan Jiani and the old man of the Li family knew each other. Although even in the period when Zan Jiani had the highest status, he was incomparable with the old man of the Li family, but he was still an acquaintance. The reason why Li Ruotai came to Donghai to develop was because the old man of the Li family had a relationship with Zan Jiani. Li Ruobing visited Zan Jiani, and thus met Zan Xiame. However, because the two of them had no business contacts, and Li Ruobing didn't like to socialize in private, so she didn't meet Zan Xiame too many times, and she had never met Zan Xiame's current husband. But she knew that Zan Xiame had been married 3 times, the first 2 failed, and the 3rd time she recruited a man. Her husband was a pure boy who was much younger than her and was only in his 20s when he married her. Little boy was not defined by Li Ruobing, but everyone said so. She heard that more than 10 years ago, when she got married for the 3rd time, she often took her husband to attend events, but not so much after that. Li Ruobing looked at Zan Xiame and thought for a while, then turned her head to look at Wu Chen suddenly, then she turned to the other side, and looked at the handsome middle-aged man whose face was pale and terrified at the moment. He is Zan Xiame's husband. That little boy who married into Zan's family more than 10 years ago. Wu Chen just sent a text message to Zan Xiame, asking her to catch the adultery. Li Ruobing thought about it and felt that was right. This middle-aged man who loved to pretend and had no quality looked like he was in his 30s. He was in his 20s when he got married more than 10 years ago, and he was now middle-aged. He was already a little old, but he still looked handsome. From this, it could be imagined that when he was young, he should have been that kind of handsome, little boy. Li Ruobing still remembered his name, and it seemed to be Wang Weijin. Zan Xiame didn't notice Li Ruobing. In other words, she didn't look at anyone else. She got out of the car and stared at the handsome middle-aged man, her husband, Wang Weijin. She led a group of bodyguards and walked over in an extremely intimidating manner. Seeing that something was wrong, the girl with heavy makeup immediately leaned against the handsome middle-aged man, hugged the handsome middle-aged man's arm, and asked, "Husband, who are they? Do you know them?" She didn't guess that Zan Xiame was Wang Weijin's wife, because there was an obvious age gap between the two. It felt like there was a 10-year difference. Wang Weijin was almost frightened crazy, and frantically pushed the girl with heavy makeup away. He even stood up and stepped aside. With a look of avoiding the plague god, he avoided the girl with heavy makeup. "Fuck, what are you doing? You pushed me, what the hell?" This girl with heavy makeup was not a good person either. "Little girl, it's none of your business here, get out." Zan Xiame, who came over, said with an unquestionable tone. She didn't want to trouble this girl, because this was not the first time Wang Weijin had been caught cheating on her. Once, she was very angry and resented the woman who seduced her husband. Then she understood. Do not blame others. She was very clear about who should be beaten when there was a wronged person and a debtor. "Who the hell are you? Fat woman, let me go. I'm telling you, you don't scare me." Now as a society ruled by law, the girl with heavy makeup turned her head and began to yell at Zan Xiame. Snap! A loud slap. The girl with heavy makeup was pulled out by Zan Xiame's arm. She fell headfirst, knocked over the chair and fell to the ground. She was stunned. "Get lost," Zan Xiame said coldly with squinting eyes. The girl with heavy makeup was not only stunned, but also frightened. She flinched back on the ground. But Zan Xiame's bodyguards went straight up, dragged the person up, and dragged her to the side of the road more than 10 meters away, and threw her away like trash. Zan Xiame didn't take another look at the girl with heavy makeup, and took 2 steps towards Wang Weijin, who was standing by the table. "Wife, listen to my explanation." Plop. Wang Weijin, who had been coaxing all the time since he came to the restaurant, knelt down. At the same time, Zan Xiame picked up the glass lemonade jug on the table, and Wang Weijin had just finished speaking, when there was a crack. The glass jug exploded on top of Wang Junwei's head, and his head was bleeding. "How many times? How many times? This old lady spent money to raise you. How many times have you gone to raise other women? I would rather raise a dog than you." Zan Xiame broke out, and went up to kick him in the face. He picked up the chair with both hands and swung it directly at him. The guests in and out of the surrounding doors were frightened. The waiter of the restaurant ran out and wanted to stop her, but was stopped by Zan Xiame's bodyguards. These bodyguards were still watching the surroundings vigilantly. Whoever dared to take out their mobile phones to take pictures, they would look for them. Zan Xiame didn't let the bodyguard do it, she did it herself. She beat Wang Weijin for 5 minutes. Wang Weijin did not dare to do anything other than hold his head and beg for mercy. He did not dare to resist. His head, hands, and face were covered with blood. Finally, Zan Xiame had had enough. "Take him away," she gestured to the bodyguard. The bodyguard went over and brought Wang Weijin to the car. Zan Xiame ignored the gazes around her, took out her mobile phone and dialed a number. It was an unknown number who notified her to come and catch the adultery. She didn't know who it was, but he must have been nearby just now, so she called to see if he was still there. Ding-ling-a-ling. Just a few meters away, Wu Chen's cell phone on the table rang. Chapter 72. Wu Chen, as terrifying as an abyss. Zan Xiame held the phone and turned her head sharply. She saw Li Ruobing's back, but she didn't recognize her until she walked a few steps and saw the ringing phone on the table before she recognized Li Ruobing. She was too angry before, so she wouldn't pay attention to others. "Miss Li, why are you here?" Zan Xiame was surprised to see Li Ruobing, and smiled, and glanced at Wu Chen. The ringing mobile phone was placed in front of Wu Chen. Zan Xiame's face was gloomy just now. She was so angry that she was out of breath, but at the moment she was talking to Li Ruobing, she showed a very natural and familiar smile, just like the moment when she suddenly met an acquaintance while walking on the street. A surprised smile. It was as if the incident of her violently beating a scumbag husband just now had never happened. This fat middle-aged businesswoman's mentality could be said to be explosive. "Ms. Zan, long time no see." Li Ruobing also stood up naturally, and shook hands with Zan Xiame with a smile on her face. Wu Chen picked up the phone that was ringing on the table and hung up directly. He stood up as well. "This is Ms. Li's boyfriend, Mr. Wu, right?" Zan Xiame glanced at Wu Chen immediately, and asked Li Ruobing with a smile. She knew that Li Ruobing had a boyfriend and that her surname was Wu, and since she conflicted with Lu Guangnian, word spread. Li Ruobing nodded. "Hi, Ms. Zan, nice to meet you." Wu Chen smiled and shook hands with Zan Xiame. "Mr. Wu is really a good-looking talent. Ms. Li has good eyesight and good luck." Zan Xiame directly praised Wu Chen, and even smiled at Li Ruobing. She had a unique position in the East China Sea. Almost no one in the East China Sea business community dared not to give her face, and almost all the big businessmen were her friends. But no matter whether it was her, Lu Guangnian, or Mu Sihai, they all had to be cautious around Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing once visited Zan Jianyi with a gift, and she was very polite. But that was to Mr. Zan Jianyi, not to her, Zan Xiame. Zan Xiame was not the one who inherited Zan Jianyi's property, nor was she ranked first among the Zan family's children. So even if she, Zan Xiame, faced Li Ruobing, the granddaughter of Li's parents and Li Ruotai's sister, she still had to think about building a good relationship and not easily offending her. Zan Xiame was somewhat similar to Lu Guangnian in terms of social skills. Are Miss Li and Mr. Wu here on a date? After a few words of politeness, Zan Xiame changed the topic back. Was that a text message from Mr. Wu? She didn't think about why Wu Chen knew her phone number. Since Li Ruobing knew about it, it's not surprising that Wu Chen knew about it. It's just, she hadn't taken her husband out to meet people all these years, and she couldn't afford to lose him. She knew that Li Ruobing probably didn't know her husband. This was a bit strange. What's more, Zan Xiame felt a little uncomfortable. The so-called family ugliness should not be publicized. Now Li Ruobing took the initiative to stir it up. Although it was a good intention to inform her, this matter would be spread more widely because of Li Ruobing's involvement. It would become gossip. I sent it. Wu Chen nodded. I'm really sorry to let you watch a joke. Zan Xiame said, smiling a little unnaturally. It's not just for Li Ruobing and Wu Chen to watch jokes. It won't be long before all the rich and powerful people in Donghai would know about it. It was estimated that some people would talk behind their backs, saying that she couldn't even look down on a man who married into her family. It's your husband. It's your family's private matter after all, and I didn't even think about sending you that text message at first. Wu Chen said again, and twitched the corner of his mouth with a smile, but, your husband's words are too ugly. He scolded us for a trivial matter. Zan Xiame's expression changed, and she immediately asked, did you argue? Not really, it's just because of a little thing. He brought that girl over, talked loudly even said that he would get a divorce if the property was divided. He even promised marrying that girl. I know, Ms. Zan and Ruobing, you two have a good personal relationship, and the Li family and the Zan family have also had friendship for a long time. Wu Chen's words were flattering the Zan family. Of course this was not the point. Ruobing knew it was your husband, and didn't want to get involved in Ms. Zan's family affairs. If you made a scene in public, it would not be very kind to Ms. Zan. But what the two of them said at that time was really harsh. Well, Ruobing turned around and asked them to keep their voices down and not disturb other guests' meals. They saw the others were angry, so they didn't say anything and apologized. It was okay when they came here, but they continued to mutter about me and Ruobing, saying that we sold houses and slept with clients, counselors, etc. Ruobing almost went to beat them. I persuaded. After all, he's your husband. If Ruobing hits him, wouldn't you have a bad relationship? We are good friends, and we have a good relationship. If we break up because of this matter, it won't be worth it. So, I sent a text message to Ms. Zan. When Wu Chen finished speaking in a calm voice, the expressions of Zan Xiame and Li Ruobing changed at the same time. When Zan Xiame looked at Wu Chen's eyes, she instantly became 100 times kinder. Outsiders might not understand what was special about Wu Chen's words, but as the offending party, Zan Xiame immediately understood how much trouble Wu Chen's text message blocked her. Zan Xiame knew who Li Ruobing was. A person of her status was told selling houses and sleeping with clients. Her anger was normal, and if she was really angry and couldn't control it, then her husband would be maimed by Li Ruobing's bodyguards in broad daylight. Behind Li Ruobing was a younger brother who was extremely protective of her. After 6 years in the East China Sea, he turned the tide and became Li Ruotai, the Mr. Li of the East China Sea. That's the eldest grandson of the Li family. He was even more difficult to mess with. So when the time came, the husband would be beaten and disabled. What should she, Zan Xiame, do? Although Wang Weijin was a door-to-door son-in-law with no status, as the saying went, it depended on the owner to beat a dog. Li Ruobing beat her husband to death. Would she care or not? Would she counterattack? Or apologize? For apology, is she going to lose face? Does the Zan family want to lose face? If she doesn't care and even apologized, it was likely to be the beginning of her Zan family's status in the East China Sea plummeting. So what? Counterattack? Question. Start a war with Li Ruobing. She was from Li family. It's really not easy to mess with. So once that step was reached, Zan Xiame would be in big trouble. No matter what she would do, it's wrong. It was neither cowardly nor rigid. Although what Wu Chen said just now was casual, and he simply said something about the situation, saying that he didn't want the two of them to have a bad relationship, but Zan Xiame understood very well how much trouble Wu Chen saved her. With a text message, this big crisis was resolved. That's it, Mr. Wu was thoughtful enough to save us trouble, and I'm sorry for wronging Ms. Li. Zan Xiame thought about apologizing quickly and even pulled Wu Chen's hand to speak. He then looked at Li Ruobing to apologize and then said, "Wait a moment." As she spoke, she hurried towards the car on the side of the road. His husband, Wang Weijin, was taken back to the car, and she was now taking him out again. Just as Zan Xiame walked away, Li Ruobing looked at Wu Chen with cold eyes, and her expression was a little strange. She knew that Wu Chen had lied just now, and he didn't tell herself in advance that he was Zan Xiame's husband. She also knew that with Zan Xiame's personality, she might not thank herself for this incident, and she might even feel uncomfortable. Helping her to catch a traitor expanded her influence and even saved trouble. But Wu Chen solved it for her with the simplest words, and even changed the starting point of the conflict from the other party speaking loudly to Li Ruobing knowing their identities and feeling that they said bad things about Zan Xiame, which was very harsh. Now Zan Xiame would not only feel comfortable with her, she would even treat her better. And Zan Xiame was probably already grateful to Wu Chen. She owed Wu Chen a big favor. How did it turn out like this? He obviously didn't seem to do anything special, but he did it. He used everyone present, including her, Li Ruobing. Li Ruobing felt Wu Chen's terrifying ability. That was a kind of communicative ability that made people feel terrified, as if they were looking at the abyss. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 73. Mr. Wu, right. I'm Su Qingying. Li Ruobing knew Wu Chen's ability and firmly believed that Wu Chen was a capable person. After all, he proved it to her too many times. But she never felt that Wu Chen was scary before, even that time with Lu Guangnian. Wu Chen finally told Li Ruobing the reason, which made Li Ruobing understand that Wu Chen completed the reversal by relying on intelligence, which was very important for an intelligence businessman. She could only say that he was really professional, really great. Until this time, Li Ruobing participated in the whole process, and she watched things happen helplessly. In the end, how Wu Chen used ingenious language to draw a perfect ending. Not only did he finish this revenge perfectly, but he also made Zan Xiame owe him a big favor. There shouldn't have been any friendship incidents, and it might even be something that made Zan Xiame uncomfortable, but Wu Chen abruptly broke it to this point. Although Wu Chen lied, the only one who could expose Wu Chen's lie was Li Ruobing. But Li Ruobing happened to be one of the beneficiaries of Wu Chen's lies. It was impossible for her to expose Wu Chen. It was impossible for her to tell Zan Xiame that the reason why she got up to tell her husband and mistress to shut up was because they spoke too loudly, not because she had a good relationship with Zan Xiame as Wu Chen said. Wu Chen's handling of this matter made everyone feel comfortable, including Li Ruobing himself. But as long as Li Ruobing analyzed it rationally, she felt like shuddering. "What's wrong with you?" Seeing Li Ruobing staring at him, Wu Chen asked with a smile. "You are so handsome today." Li Ruobing also imitated Wu Chen's expression, and said with a smile. "Really, I've always been handsome, not just today," Wu Chen said, and raised his hand to tug on his collar. Seeing this, Li Ruobing walked around the table, walked up to Wu Chen, and took the initiative to straighten Wu Chen's collar. Normal behavior between lovers. Li Ruobing took the opportunity to get closer to Wu Chen, and whispered to Wu Chen, "You always know how to play. Are you getting more and more interested in me?" Wu Chen squinted and asked Li Ruobing in a low voice. "Yes, I'm really interested. I really want to peel you off layer by layer to see how your heart and brain works." "Are you always so sure?" "Don't say that. It's so scary. I'm not an onion to peel off layer by layer." Wu Chen didn't answer Li Ruobing's question. In the eyes of others, Li Ruobing took the initiative to go forward to tidy up Wu Chen's clothes, and then the two of them whispered together, intimate. At the same time, Zan Xiame had already returned to the car, and brought out her bloody scumbag husband again. Hurry up, don't dawdle. Seemingly disliking Wang Weijun for walking slowly, Zan Xiame kicked Wang Weijun's lower back. Wang Weijun staggered and fell directly to the table of Li Ruobing and Wu Chen. What the hell are you talking about? You eat my food and drink my drink, and I don't give you less money. You go to raise another woman, and I won't talk about it anymore today. But you're still making trouble for me by offending people, huh? Do you not have eyes? How can you offend Ms. Li? You're useless. Zan Xiame seemed puzzled again, and he stepped on Wang Weijun a lot while scolding. At this time, she had the temperament of a shrew. Apologize quickly. I told you to apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was blind. I'm sorry. I'm not as good as a pig or a dog. I'm nothing. Wang Weijun knelt down and apologized to Li Ruobing, while slapping himself in the face. A very skilled way of apologizing. Li Ruobing frowned slightly. Although she had always had a good relationship with Zan Xiame, she never agreed with some of Zan Xiame's actions. After Zan Xiame experienced 2 failed marriages, she began to have a little boy. After she was pregnant with Wang Weijun's child, she let Wang Weijun marry into her family. At that time, she was already a little distorted. If she was in a bad mood, she would fight. At one time, it was not an exaggeration to describe Zan Xiame as a perverted rich woman. This was Wang Weijun's own choice. He chose this path and was willing to marry into a family and be a dog, but there was nothing to sympathize with. However, Li Ruobing could hardly agree with Zan Xiame's willingness to make her legal husband embarrass himself in public and slap herself in the face in order to ease the relationship and make friends with others. Li Ruobing would never do such a thing on this occasion, no matter how she punished her own people who made mistakes. She didn't even want to accept this kind of apology in public, surrounded by a group of people. Li Ruobing didn't care what Wang Weijun was, what she cared about was Zan Xiame. After all, she was a very useful contact, but, speaking of it, Zan Xiame was really very problematic at home, in her private life, and in her attitude towards the people around her. But it had nothing to do with Li Ruobing. From the perspective of interpersonal relationship and connections, Zan Xiame was fine. Miss Li, I'm really sorry today. I didn't expect our dog to be so short-sighted. Zan Xiame raised her head and said to Li Ruobing again. After she finished scolding her husband angrily, she smiled the moment she raised her head. It's like having schizophrenia. Wang Weijun was still apologizing and slapping himself, but Zan Xiame didn't tell him to stop. It's okay, Ms. Zan. It's all over, Li Ruobing said to Zan Xiame, and looked around as she said that. Although Li Ruobing and Zan Xiame's bodyguards were all scattered around and staring at each other, no one else dared to approach. But even if it was far away, there were people who stopped and looked towards the restaurant door. How about this? You haven't had lunch today, have you? Zan Xiame noticed Li Ruobing's expression. She knew that Li Ruobing didn't want to be watched, and she saw that there were only drinks on the 2 tables, so it was obvious that there was no food served. How about this? I invite you, let's eat inside. Miss Li, we haven't seen each other for a few months. Last time my old man even praised you, saying that you are more capable than me, and you have only been in Donghai for a few years. Your business is so big, I want to learn from you. Zan Xiame was also really good at talking. Just like that, the 3 of them entered the Italian restaurant and went to the private room on the 2nd floor. And Wang Weijun, Zan Xiame arranged for bodyguards to take him to the hospital before entering the door. The farce was finally over. But what Li Ruobing didn't expect was that this meal took more than 3 hours. It was Zan Xiame's treat, and there were only 3 people in the room. She seemed to have endless things to say. Not only could she discuss some things with Li Ruobing, but she could also talk to Wu Chen. On the contrary, she praised Wu Chen and Li Ruobing very naturally, saying that they were like a fish in water, a perfect match, and that the symphony company would inevitably go to a higher level. All were taken care of. Wu Chen understood Zan Xiame's thoughts. She actually just wanted to talk more and get closer, she didn't want Li Ruobing to have knots in her heart because of her husband's affairs, and on the other hand, she also wanted to take this opportunity to deepen her relationship with Li Ruobing. The meal didn't come to an end until after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They didn't eat much, but they drank lots. It was Zan Exiame who opened the wine. She drank almost 2 bottles of red wine by herself, and even served champagne, but she was not drunk, and her drinking capacity was amazing. Li Ruobing didn't drink that much, but she was not sober and slightly drunk as Zan Exiame. Because she didn't like to socialize in private, she didn't drink much, and her alcohol capacity was very average. At around 3:40, the three walked out of the restaurant and bid farewell at the door. Zan Exiame got in the car and left. Li Ruobing didn't want to go back to the company right away. She took Wu Chen's hand, leaned slightly on Wu Chen's shoulder and said, "Let's find a place for a walk and let the wind blow." Wu Chen knew why without asking. Li Ruobing wants to sober up. She would not go to the company drunk. She didn't like the feeling of being drunk, because people were the strongest when they were the calmest. The two began to walk along the sidewalk, crossed the square, and walked to the shade of the trees on the opposite side. This place was very lively. People came and went. Li Ruobing's bodyguards followed from a distance, and they didn't get too close. Li Ruobing didn't speak. Nobody knew what she was thinking when she was slightly drunk. Ding-a-ling. Wu Chen's cell phone rang suddenly. He took it out and glanced at it. A weird smile appeared on his face, and he put the connection to his ear. "Mr. Wu, right, I'm Su Qingying. I think we need to meet. Let's make an appointment." The voice on the phone was very cold. Chapter 74. Bastards who do not take advantage of a bargain. The time when Su Qingying called was a little earlier than Wu Chen expected. He inferred it to be in a few days. It's hard to say the exact number of days, but it would be soon. He didn't expect that Su Qingying would take the initiative to call just after 1 day. It wasn't even a text message, which showed how urgent she wants to solve this problem. 1 day was enough for her to investigate all of Wu Chen's information. At the beginning, when Li Ruobing checked Wu Chen, all she needed was a phone call, and Wu Chen's information appeared on her desk in less than an hour. Su Qingying can also know Wu Chen's information with just 1 phone call, but it's all basic information. Such as Wu Chen's age, education background, basic family situation, etc. Apart from these basic information, Wu Chen had nothing special about him. Before July 7, 2020, Wu Chen was very, very ordinary, so ordinary that in his 22 years of life, there was nothing special worth mentioning. However, after July 7 passed, Wu Chen's life suddenly became extremely exciting. Even so, until today, it's only July 10. Only 3 days. Although many things happened these days, they all happened recently, and there were only a few key people, so it was easier to find out. Su Qingying's ability to call meant that she already knew that Wu Chen was Li Ruobing's man, and that Wu Chen had conflicts with Lu Guangnian. Thinking about it, Su Qingying should be more panicked than yesterday. Because she found that Wu Chen was not an ordinary person. He was too ordinary before, but suddenly he was not ordinary. This was tantamount to telling her that it was difficult for her to use a sum of money or other means of coercion and lure to seal Wu Chen's mouth. She was a person from the Su family, and it is difficult to touch him directly. "There's no need to meet, right?" Wu Chen said with a faint smile. "I've already told you. Don't worry about your affairs, I won't tell anyone else." "No, Mr. Wu, I think it is very necessary for us to meet." Su Qingying's voice was still calm and indifferent. "There are some things that we should explain clearly in person. I don't know where you got the information, but I think you may have misunderstood. You are so worried about me." Wu Chen sighed with a smile. "Okay, fine. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning, Tangsha's private club, call me when you arrive." Su Qingying reported the time and place. "Okay," Wu Chen said. The other person directly hung up. Wu Chen just put the phone in his pocket, when he heard a slightly drunk voice from the side. "Who is that?" "It seems to be a woman's voice." Li Ruobing and Wu Chen were walking under the shade of a tree arm in arm, and she could vaguely hear what seemed to be a woman's voice, but she couldn't make out what was being said. It could be analyzed from Wu Chen's words. It seemed that Wu Chen knew what was going on with the other party, and the other party was worried about him. This was quite in line with Wu Chen's status as an information businessman. Why, women are not allowed to call me. Wu Chen tilted his head and smiled. Are you jealous? Didn't I lose to you, so I can't be jealous? Li Ruobing smiled, and she smiled very slightly. Then why you still care about whether it's a woman? Wu Chen said. Isn't it okay to ask? It's just a chat. Is that business? Someone asked you to keep a secret. Li Ruobing asked again. It's not a business, but it is related to a secret. Wu Chen smiled. Tell me about it, Li Ruobing said. You didn't have such a strong curiosity, did you? It's not like you who want to know other people's secrets. Wu Chen teased. Who says I'm not curious? Li Ruobing said immediately. She pulled her hand suddenly, turned to face Wu Chen, poked her finger on Wu Chen's heart, and said very slowly, I'm just curious about you. Under the influence of alcohol, Li Ruobing was indeed a little different. You want to know me so much? Wu Chen smiled. Can't I understand you? There is something about you that fascinates me. Li Ruobing said this very directly. Are you in love with me? Wu Chen asked with a smile. That's not true. Li Ruobing denied it first, and then said, I just think, I have to admit, you really meet my requirements for a partner. Wow, this doesn't sound like good news. Wu Chen smiled strangely. You belittled me on purpose again. Li Ruobing narrowed her eyes. No, Wu Chen didn't finish speaking. Because Li Ruobing suddenly wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him directly, it was more sudden than last night at the alley, but this time Li Ruobing was not so intense, very delicate, very slow, and breathing heavily. She really couldn't kiss. Wu Chen guided her and responded to her. The two hugged each other under the shade of a tree beside the square where people come and go, savoring each other slowly. Li Ruobing's bodyguards stopped at a distance, did not approach, and looked around carefully. Among the passers-by, some people noticed, and there were some young couples among them. They gestured towards the shade of the trees, looked at each other and laughed together. There was a slight breeze. No one bothered to disturb the scene. No one noticed that on the side of the driving road far away, the rear window of a black off-road vehicle was open. A man with a binoculars saw the scene under the shade of a tree, and then he quickly put down the binoculars and picked up a barrel-like SLR camera that was lifted up to quickly adjust the focus, zoomed in on, and took a picture of this scene. It took 10 seconds or even longer. Li Ruobing finally lowered her head, moved her head back, and raised her head to look at Wu Chen. She pursed the corner of her mouth and asked with a smile, Why don't you push me away? Why should I push you away? Wu Chen asked rhetorically. You have been acting like you don't like me, you won't fall in love with me, and you even belittled me on purpose, shouldn't you push me away? Li Ruobing laughed teasingly. Don't you have women who are prettier and richer than me? It's not the same thing, is it? Wu Chen smiled. Isn't it? Then how do you explain it? Why didn't you push me away even though you despise me? It's difficult to explain. Something is difficult to explain to you. It's just that there's a bargain, so how can I not take it? Li Ruobing almost didn't come up again, and choked. She didn't know why, but whenever Wu Chen said such words, she felt very angry. Forget it, just keep your mouth shut. Li Ruobing was upset, and wrote her displeasure on her face, hooking Wu Chen's arms, strode forward and said, Let's go, it's time to go back to the company. They went back. When the two returned to the Symphony Fashion Company, it was already past 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time they reached the underground parking lot, Li Ruobing had almost sobered up. She wasn't very drunk in the first place. Li Ruobing had to work overtime today, the spokesperson changed, and many arrangements had to be adjusted, so the two of them would not have dinner together. Wu Chen didn't even go upstairs. Since there was nothing else to do, he got out of Li Ruobing's car, went to pick up his Lamborghini, and drove home. Back to Villa number 36, Donghai Wifu. Wu Chen went to the basement floor to exercise again. This fitness room had a full set of fitness equipment that Li Ruotai bought before, just like a gym. Yesterday Wu Chen exercised his muscles, and woke up early in the morning in pain. He was fine after the massage. So today, he decided to take it slow, not to do anaerobic training, but to do aerobic, punching sandbags. Just hit the sandbags. Practice muscle memory or something. It was estimated that his whole body would still hurt tomorrow, but it was good to be able to move. At around 10 o'clock in the evening, the extremely exhausted Wu Chen fell into a deep sleep. A new day, July 11, 2020. Wu Chen woke up early in the morning, watched the news for a while, had a phone call with Li Ruobing, and then slowly went downstairs to have breakfast. After 8 o'clock in the morning, he drove the Lamborghini. Before 9 o'clock, Wu Chen appeared on time outside Tingsha's private club that he had agreed with Su Qingying. He dialed Su Qingying's phone number and said, "I'm here." Chapter 75. Just go straight to it. Come in, I will tell the front desk. Come to the golf course, I am in Area C. Su Qingying's voice was as calm and indifferent as yesterday, and she hung up the phone after speaking. Wu Chen drove into the front yard of Tingsha Private Club, a huge parking lot. The location of Tingsha Private Club was very remote. It was located in the northern suburb of Donghai City. It could only be regarded as just next to the main city, but not in the main city. However, this place was extremely high-end and luxurious. The most important thing was that it was big, very big. It was different from the sensual place run by Li Ruotai. The business nature of this place was stronger. One-sentence summary. This was the rich man's club. A building that didn't not look tall but covers a huge area and was full of design sense. It not only had catering and accommodation, but also provided swimming, fitness, bowling, tennis, golf and other entertainment and leisure projects, and provided 24-hour butler service. This was a high-end business club that only accepted members and did not accept any individual guests. One must apply for a card to enjoy the services here. The lowest level gold card costed 200,000 yuan a year, and the 200,000 yuan was just the money to open the card, and consumption was calculated separately. The higher level diamond card was 1 million a year, and the same consumption was calculated separately. There was also the most advanced black card. Black card was not something that could be obtained with money. If the status was not enough, or if no one recommended you, you couldn't get the black card. Members of different levels could enjoy different services. As far as Wu Chen knew, Su Qingying had a black card here. Black card members could bring other people to eat and spend here without a limit, and at the same time could use all the entertainment and leisure facilities here. There were many luxury cars in the parking lot, but because the parking lot was too large, it still looked a bit empty. Wu Chen randomly found a place, parked the Lamborghini, and walked in. He was familiar with the road. He entered the hall and walked directly to the front desk. He had been here too many times before. In the Millennium Reincarnation, he came here often for a period of time. Although it costed 200,000 yuan to apply for a card, and Wu Chen didn't have that much savings at the time, he could mortgage the house and borrow usury directly. After completing the procedures, the account would be credited in seconds, and it could be completed in a morning, which was very fast. It resetted every day, so he didn't think about the problem after the money was spent at all. However, he didn't spend money to apply for a card every time he came to Tingsha Clubhouse before. He also sneaked in many times. He developed his skills, and it's really not difficult to sneak in. He had fully enjoyed here, the leisure and entertainment of the rich and wealthy in the upper class. "Sir, your card, is this your first time here? Would you like to familiarize yourself with the environment first?" The lady at the front desk said with a smile on her face, extremely professional. "I have an appointment with someone, Miss Su," Wu Chen said with a smile. "Wait a moment," she lowered her head as she said, as if she wanted to check for Wu Chen. "Mr. Wu." At this moment, a middle-aged woman in business attire walked over quickly. She was very beautiful and elegant, and she was the front office manager of Tingsha Private Club. "That's me." Wu Chen looked at the front office manager and said. "This way, Mr. Wu, Miss Su is waiting for you." The front office manager immediately led the way. She didn't know who Wu Chen was, but she knew who Su Qingying was, the guest of the first daughter in the East China Sea, so she couldn't be careless. Because this place was very big, Wu Chen followed the front office manager for several minutes, and he took a sightseeing bus for 2 minutes before seeing Su Qingying from afar. Area C of the golf course. Facing the golf course on the first floor, it was an open terrace garden structure, and extended outwards with a sunshade with a length of 5 meters in length and a length of 100 meters in width. A great position. It was only 9 o'clock in the morning, and there was no one on the golf course. Wu Chen got off the sightseeing car, and looked at Su Qingying, who was waving a golf club and hitting the ball from a distance. "Mr. Wu, Miss Su is waiting for you over there," the front office manager said. "Thank you," Wu Chen said, gathered his suit, and walked over with one hand in his pocket. Block C No. 15. Su Qingying was wearing sportswear and a sun hat, holding the club with her arms outstretched, compared the golf balls on the tee twice back and forth, and swung vigorously. Duo. The white golf ball was knocked out and flew far away. "You play well, half of my level." Wu Chen walked a few meters behind Su Qingying, turned his head to look at the flying ball, said something with a smile, and looked at Su Qingying again. Su Qingying propped the club on the ground, clasped her palms, and turned to look at Wu Chen. She passed the stage when her heart was most fearful, uneasy and uncontrollable, so she was calm, at least on the surface. Even if Su Qingying was wearing sportswear and a sun hat, she was a stunning woman, like a fairy air. She was obviously a few months older than Li Ruobing, but she felt a few years younger than Li Ruobing, with a strong sense of girlhood. This was the reason why she liked big wavy hair. She looked too young because of her good looks and good skin, and big wavy hair could make her seem more mature. "How do you know?" Su Qingying asked calmly, then turned around again. The ball machine automatically placed the ball. After she finished asking, she adjusted the position of the golf ball with the club. Then, as before, she compared it twice, then raised the club violently, and swung it. Hit the golf ball hard. Snap. The sound was crisper than before. "How I know, it's not important." Wu Chen smiled. "Everyone has secrets, and they are afraid of being known, but how they are known is not the key. Let's agree to a price." Su Qingying said. "What price? Do you think I'm trying to blackmail you? If you don't take money, I can't feel at ease. If I take your money, it's really blackmail. As I said, you can rest assured, I won't tell anyone." "You just say that, how can I believe you? You should understand that once that incident is exposed, it will affect me, my reputation will be ruined, my family will be shamed, and even, it will affect everyone. Whether I can take over the company smoothly in the future, once the board of directors loses trust in me, even if my father is the major shareholder, then my father is not in good health, I can't let him get stressed out." Duo. Another golf ball flew out. While Su Qingying was talking to Wu Chen, she kept playing. Wu Chen knew that she used to dislike sports very much, but as she got older, she liked it more and more, especially golf. Because she could vent stress. Every shot was exhausting, and the golf ball is hit at least hundreds of meters away. It was really a stress reliever. At least for Su Qingying, it was a very effective means of decompression. "Are you threatening me? You made the situation so serious on purpose, how do you want me to assure you? Since you are so worried, why don't you bring a few more bodyguards today?" Wu Chen said, looking at both sides, then he looked at Su Qingying. "Bring a few more people, arrest me, dig a hole and bury me, and I will shut up forever." There were Su Qingying's bodyguards nearby, but they were all far away. This was a golf course, a very open place. There was no possibility of strangers approaching Su Qingying suddenly, so the bodyguards would not get too close. This was also the reason why Su Qingying met Wu Chen here. No one could hear what the two would speak about. "I'm not Li Ruobing, how could I do that kind of thing?" Su Qingying said. "You say that about my girlfriend in front of me, are you not afraid that I will talk nonsense when I get angry? We're not the same kind of person." Su Qingying was speaking, shaking the cue again, ready to hit the ball. Suddenly, She felt someone hug her and hold her hands. It was Wu Chen who suddenly stepped forward and hugged her from behind. To be precise, he followed her arm and held the golf club. That's not how it's supposed to be played. Don't always think about venting pressure. If you want to hit further, I'll teach you, Wu Chen said. It was the first official meeting between the two, and Wu Chen started directly without saying a word. You, what are you doing? Let go. Su Qingying shook her shoulders and struggled. Chapter 76. What are you looking at me for? Play ball. Su Qingying was panicked. Although Wu Chen seemed to be just teaching her how to play, no man had ever touched her so suddenly. Her panic also came from the fact that the bodyguards were nearby and would tell her family. Once her family knew she had such contact with a strange man, it would be bad. In fact, it might not really be that bad, but Su Qingying thought it will be very bad. Don't you want me to keep a secret? You don't believe me, and it's hard to believe me. I just want you to believe me now. Why are you still unwilling? Wu Chen whispered in Su Qingying's ear, saying very convoluted. What do you mean? Let go of me before you speak. Su Qingying still struggled a little, but she didn't seem too daring to use force. Upbringing kept her from doing things that would embarrass her in public. Even if there were no other people around, she would subconsciously pay attention to her own etiquette. It was of course extremely rude to scramble with people. You said, if Li Ruobing knows that I taught you how to play, what will happen to me? Wu Chen laughed softly. Su Qingying didn't move for a moment, and stopped struggling. With her talent, learning and wisdom, it was natural to see through it. She knew exactly who Li Ruobing was, a strong and controlling woman. If Li Ruobing knew about how her boyfriend would hug another woman like this, pretending to teach her how to play golf, if Li Ruobing could believe it, he would go to hell. Li Ruobing might tear Wu Chen alive. So who should be afraid of now was not Su Qingying, but Wu Chen. Su Qingying shouldn't struggle, but should cooperate with Wu Chen, and grasp Wu Chen's handle to death. In this way, both parties would hold each other's handle, and both were very fatal, then both parties would keep it secret. Immediately after thinking through all this, Su Qingying stopped moving, and did not make any struggling moves. Su Qingying's two bodyguards, who were far away, saw the man Su Qingying had met with today, and suddenly hugged her from behind. Su Qingying seemed to be resisting, and they had already approached the two quickly. But Su Qingying suddenly cooperated. Not only did she not resist, but she also whispered to Wu Chen. This made them stop suddenly. Although their faces became very strange because of this, they still retreated. Who is this man? Why does he seem to be very close to the eldest lady? Could it be that the eldest lady is secretly in love? Aren't you afraid that I'll call Li Ruobing right now to tell on you? Su Qingying glanced at Wu Chen and said, her delicate face like a fairy looked calm, but her eyes betrayed her. She was not calm. Her heart was not as strong as Li Ruobing's. The difference was too much. I'm afraid, Wu Chen said with a smile. In truth, he was afraid of fart. He even made a bet with Li Ruobing yesterday to win over Su Qingying, but now he had to say he was afraid. He said, I know you are also afraid that I will tell people about you, so, wouldn't we be balanced? At the same time, he wrapped his arms around Su Qingying, holding the club through Su Qingying's hand, and comparing with her back and forth twice. You don't say it, I don't say it, it's the best result for us. Now, are you still worried that I will leak the secret? After Wu Chen finished speaking, he led Su Qingying's body and raised the golf club fiercely. They hit the ball. Duo. The golf ball was knocked out, drew an exaggerated arc in the air, flew far away, landed on the top of the grass slope in the distance, and rolled down again. Su Qingying looked at the direction in which the ball flew out. It was at least 350 meters. Wu Chen's shot already reached the level of a professional player. He was still holding Su Qingying. The posture was not so comfortable. This is how this is played. Your pure venting style of play, which does not consider skills and only relies on brute force, may be very enjoyable the first few times, but after playing too much, you find that you can't hit the ball farther. It may even be closer than before. At that time, you would feel very uncomfortable, and the decompression effect would not be so good. Wu Chen rambled, and when he finished speaking, the ball machine had already set up the ball. He hugged Su Qingying and swung again. Duo. This shot was farther than last time, but it's hard to say how far it was. They could only calculate it according to the eye-catching distance marks on both sides of the field. The current world record for the farthest golf ball was 530 yards, or 484 meters. Professional players hit the ball normally, and the distance they hit was generally within 400 yards, which was about 365 meters. Wu Chen had skills, but his body was not good enough, so he definitely had no chance to chase the world record, but it was still very easy to hit the distance of a professional player, and he could hit like that every shot. Are you trying to give me a handle on purpose? Su Qingying asked, with a delicate mood. She had too little experience with men, and she didn't even have male friends of the same age, so she didn't dare to get too close. And now, even though she had only met Wu Chen not long ago, Wu Chen's boldness when he hugged her suddenly, Wu Chen's carefulness in relieving her inner panic, and this unique way all left a deep impression on her. Forget it, whoever made you worry about me so much, I can only take the initiative. Wu Chen said. This was not the first time he had done such a thing. The experience in the Millennium Reincarnation made Wu Chen understand that giving handles could be said to be one of the simplest, most effective and most direct means of gaining others' trust and peace of mind. Because people were selfish. No matter how good the relationship was, no matter how deep the relationship was, once something happened, they might turn their faces immediately. But the handle was different. That would make people be wary, and people would not dare to harm you even if they wanted to. It was a means of controlling people. While talking with Su Qingying, Wu Chen was still teaching Su Qingying how to play again and again. He just held her and hit the ball. Don't always swing too fast to vent the pressure. What you need is the last explosive point. The ball is hit far, which is your explosive point. The process is too violent, but the effect you want is not achieved. Would you be happy? There must be a rhythm when swinging, just like me. Wu Chen said, then he raised the club again with Su Qingying's arm. He hit the ball. This ball flew at least 300 meters. Wu Chen let go of Su Qingying, watched the golf ball land on the lawn far away, and rolled far away. He showed a satisfied smile, turned his head and said to Su Qingying, "Come on, try it. In fact, your golf is very good. There are no major problems, but there are some minor problems that need to be corrected." Su Qingying squinted at Wu Chen. How did it come to him teach her how to play? Wu Chen has been leading the conversation between the two of them. Why are you looking at me? Play. Wu Chen frowned and said, suddenly became so strict. He really looked like a golf coach. Just as he finished speaking, Wu Chen made a sudden move again. Snapped. He slapped Su Qingying hard on the ass. Don't turn it out, turn it in. How did your previous coach teach you? Chapter 77. Do you want to run with me? Su Qingying was stunned by the sudden pain. Wu Chen dared to hit her, and it was in such a special place. Her face turned red, and an indescribable strange feeling quickly spread all over her body from behind. Tuck it in, Wu Chen reminded again, and pressed his hand directly, then helped Su Qingying's waist and said, this way, stand like this. Finally, he pressed his hands on Su Qingying's shoulder again. He gently pressed outward, a small change in angle. Okay, play. Pay attention to the right knee, pay attention to the degree of bending. After speaking, Wu Chen took a step back and motioned for Su Qingying to play. Why is it like this? Su Qingying didn't think about it for a while. She stood up as Wu Chen said, habitually corrected the position, and then swung. There was no T for the machine, which was the small base inserted into the ground, which could raise the golf ball a bit higher, so that the player could hit the ball better. It was generally used when hitting a long-distance ball. Su Qingying never used it before. She played golf to vent, and she didn't want to work so hard. Before playing, it was Su Qingying's habit to touch the ball with the club and let it move a little. Duo. This ball flew over 100 meters. You are really stupid. Sports idiots don't want to play ball. Wu Chen said and hugged Su Qingying again. I will teach you again. Draw your legs back, and straighten your arms, like this. Wu Chen hugged Su Qingying again. She hit it once. With this shot, the ball flew nearly 400 meters, which was of course an estimate. Although the distance was too far to see clearly, the golf course was very flat and large, so it could be seen at a glance. Do it again. Wu Chen took another step back. Immediately afterwards, crack, Wu Chen slapped her butt again. Tuck it in, tuck it in. Do you have an anterior pelvis? Get treatment if you're sick. Wu Chen's words were wrong. The pelvic position was a pathological phenomenon, the symptom was kyphosis, and the lower abdomen was lordotic. In fact, Su Qingying didn't have this problem. Wu Chen just said that on purpose. He's really like a coach with a temper. Su Qingying's face turned red again, almost dripping red, but she didn't refute Wu Chen. She took a deep breath and looked down at the ball. At this moment, Wu Chen slightly raised his head and squinted his eyes. From the corner of his eye, he noticed the two men in black suits standing far away from the side of the court, Su Qingying's bodyguards. One of them already pulled out his mobile phone and was talking on the phone. Wu Chen's purpose was to see if and when they would call. After Wu Chen hit Su Qingying for the first time, Wu Chen paid attention to them, but they didn't call that time. Well, they were terrified. This time Wu Chen hit Su Qingying again. They were finally doing something. Wu Chen knew who they were calling, and he even knew what they would say. On the north side of the golf course, next to a sightseeing car. After a brief exchange between two bodyguards, the taller one took out his mobile phone and dialed a number. Hey, ma'am, it's me. Yes, Miss plays golf in Tangsha. We came here early in the morning. It's not a problem, but Miss met a young man in his early 20s, we don't know him. We didn't hear what they said. You know, Miss likes to be alone when she plays ball, and doesn't let us get too close. It's just, that man hugged Miss just now, and Miss is still talking and laughing with him. Yes, yes, he even slapped the lady's butt, as if he was teaching the lady how to play. Yes, very young, the lady came today, it seems that she is just waiting for him. Yes. The tall bodyguard hung up the phone, then turned his head and whispered to the bodyguard beside him, Madam tells us to guard first. Madam will come over in person later. If that man leaves, follow him. No. 15, Block C. Are you really stupid? Are you a fool? You should have been playing golf for a few years, right? Wu Chen was talking about Su Qingying again, and then simply pulled Su Qingying's arm, pulled her aside, and snatched the club away from Su Qingying's hand. With the club, he stood in Su Qingying's position. Look, I'll hit it myself. Watch my movements. When Wu Chen finished speaking, the machine automatically sent the ball over again. Wu Chen didn't pause at all, he just turned around and raised the club. He swung. Golf was not only a sport that needed the ball to be hit far, but also accurately. But Wu Chen only needed to hit far away now, so he could hit casually. Snapped. This shot also hit a distance of more than 400 meters. It might be the farthest shot Wu Chen hit today, and it was almost Wu Chen's limit. There was no wind today. It was impossible to break the world record without a favorable wind. Su Qingying looked up and saw the ball flying far away. Her right hand was still pinching her left arm subconsciously. Because Wu Chen was pulling her just now, his hand was quite strong, and it hurt a little. Come, you hit. Wu Chen returned the club to Su Qingying, and moved aside himself. Su Qingying walked to the playing position, put on a nearly standard ready posture, and moved a bit, but it was not so standard. How many times have I told you? Tuck it in. Tuck it in. Does it look like your butt is up? Pop. Wu Chen slapped Su Qingying for the third time. Su Qingying blushed, her breathing was very unsteady, and she whispered, I see. For the next half an hour, both of them seemed to have forgotten why they met today. Wu Chen taught Su Qingying how to play very seriously. At the beginning, he kept his words to himself, but then he became more and more excessive. He almost described Su Qingying, who had a high degree of education, high IQ and high self-cultivation, as a mentally handicapped person with negative learning ability. Su Qingying acted, also very serious. She seriously learned how to play golf with Wu Chen. And she didn't ask too many questions. She would beat Wu Chen as she said, and if she couldn't beat him well, she would be scolded, and sometimes she would even be beaten. I'm convinced. Go ahead and play. I'll watch from the back and take a break. Wu Chen glanced at his watch and walked back. There were sofas and small tables behind the tea table, and there were fruit plates and drinks on it. This was a place for the rich to relax, and the conditions were naturally very good. Wu Chen sat down on the sofa at the back, raised his legs, and looked at Su Qingying on the teeing ground a few meters ahead. Su Qingying played again, once again, twice, 3 times. Good shot. Progress. Wu Chen suddenly praised and praised. Su Qingying stopped, turned around to look at Wu Chen with her hands on the cue, and said, I'm not stupid. After she finished speaking, she turned around, and this time, her preparation posture was a bit substandard. Wu Chen got up directly and walked over, slapped Su Qingying, then hugged Su Qingying, held the club and said, come on, let me teach you again. One last time. He was mad. He almost gritted his teeth. Swing. Snapped. This time the ball flew nearly 400 meters. Su Qingying's previous best result was more than 200 meters. Okay, stop playing. Wu Chen watched the ball hit the ground, let go of Su Qingying and turned his head. Are you going back? Is there something urgent? Su Qingying asked. It's not urgent. Wu Chen glanced at his watch, then looked at Su Qingying and said, I guess your mother has already brought someone over to arrest me. After a while, he said in a low voice, I noticed that they called before. Su Qingying's face changed drastically. She looked in the direction Wu Chen seemed to be unintentionally glancing at, and then she understood everything. The bodyguard betrayed her. Mother probably already knew that she was playing golf with a man here, and they had unusual physical contact, so she must bring someone here to kill him. Then, what should we do? Su Qingying was extremely nervous at this moment. Run. Run first and don't let anyone block you. Wu Chen smiled as he seemed to find this very interesting, and then smiled and asked in a low voice, would you like to run with me? Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audio Wave. Chapter 78. Ma'am, Miss ran away with that kid. Run with you. Su Qingying was stunned, looking at Wu Chen in disbelief. Her emotions were written on her face, and she was more nervous than before. She wasn't just nervous, she was even scared. On the outside, she was the senior vice president of Jinfu Group, a capable and courageous strong woman. Everyone was optimistic about her. She was the successor of Jinfu Group. She was almost perfect, whether it was appearance, family background, ability, upbringing, everything was impeccable. But she was afraid of her family, of her parents, especially her mother. This kind of fear was the same as the fear of the old man in the big family. For example, in the Li family, except for Li Ruobing, no one was not afraid of the old man, including Li Ruotai. Even Li Ruotai was afraid of his grandfather. He didn't want to disappoint him, but there was a limit. Su Qingying was different. She had been controlled too much since she was a child, which caused her to have a flattering personality. It's not that Li Ruotai didn't make mistakes. He knew it was wrong, but he did it too. At that time, he thought that it would be better not to be found out. If he was found out, he would just apologize and admit his mistakes. But Su Qingying, she didn't allow herself to make mistakes. The reason why she didn't allow herself to make mistakes was usually because she was afraid of disappointing the people around her. In the company, she was afraid of shareholders looking at each other. At home, she was afraid of her parents being disappointed in her. She had been so good since she was a child, so good that no one would allow her to have flaws. When Wu Chen said that her mother would come over immediately to arrest Wu Chen, or the two of them, she immediately thought of all kinds of terrible consequences. Her mother didn't allow her to fall in love freely, and she couldn't get too close to any male of the same age in private. As the successor of Jinfu Group, her future life partner must be approved by the family and the family should be satisfied before she can make a choice. She was to ask the family to screen first, pick out the ones that the family thought are worthy of Su Qingying, and then let Su Qingying choose from these few. She didn't have any freedom in this regard. As for her actions with Wu Chen on the golf course today, there was no doubt that once Wu Chen was caught by the Su family, he would be coerced and lured. In fact, this was nothing. Because the two were not in love. But the problem was, the truth was scarier than the fact that the two were in a relationship. Su Qingying was worried that if Wu Chen revealed the reason for coming here and that secret, under threat, it would be destructive to Su Qingying. At least she thought it will be destructive. A good girl with a halo since she was a child, a flawless and proud girl of heaven, was actually that kind of woman. No matter how high she stood, she would fall. Su Qingying really didn't know how she would face the people around her after the secret was revealed. Wu Chen said he wanted to run. She was still afraid. She felt that running could not solve the problem. She had used the energy of the Su family to investigate who Wu Chen was before. She could investigate, and so could her mother. Mother would know who Wu Chen was. She would find Wu Chen. But now, Wu Chen not only wanted to run away by himself, but also asked her if she wanted to come together. Su Qingying was completely shocked. Wouldn't it make it even more difficult to explain clearly? Wouldn't it be impossible to deceive by making up nonsense? She knew that her mother had brought someone to look for her, but she wanted to run with a man. This was something that Su Qingying dared not even think about. Are you going to live like this forever? Wu Chen seemed to know what Su Qingying was thinking, grabbed her hand and said, "You are already 27 years old. Not 7 years old. You are a person with independent thinking and independent personality. An adult, not a puppet. You will suffer from depression sooner or later like this." But Su Qingying understood what Wu Chen was talking about. "I estimate that your mother will arrive within 10 minutes. I can leave, but have you thought about how to explain it to your mother?" Wu Chen said again. Su Qingying said, 3 times, but couldn't continue. "Let's go first, avoid them first, and then think of a way. When the arrangements are made, we can explain when we go back." What else? Some things must have a first time. Wu Chen looked into Su Qingying's eyes again. "As you wrote in the forum post, you live such a tired life, you should let go of the burden and take the first step bravely. Do you want to keep suppressing like this forever? Do you want to live like this forever? Living for others. Your parents are always right. Do you think you will be able to run the company well in the future?" Wu Chen kept staring into Su Qingying's eyes. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Wu Chen let go of Su Qingying's hand. "Forget it, I'll go first." After speaking, he turned and left. He didn't even take a step out, because Su Qingying suddenly raised her hand and grabbed his clothes from behind. Wu Chen looked back at her. I'll go with you." Su Qingying summoned up a lot of courage and said. After saying this, her expression quickly changed from nervous and panic to calm. It was as if the psychological hurdle had been overcome all of a sudden, and she had completed her inner transformation. "Let's go together," Su Qingying said again to herself. She seemed to cheer up and strengthened her own ideas. She took 2 deep breaths, then turned to look at the 2 bodyguards in the distance. She took out her mobile phone, as if she was going to make a call. "What are you doing?" Wu Chen pressed her hand and asked. "I'll push them away." Su Qingying turned her head and said. "Aren't you still afraid? You are still thinking about other people. You have to find reasons for them not to watch you. At the same time, you are also afraid to face them directly. You are afraid that they will block you and dare not leave directly." Every word of Wu Chen's words hit Su Qingying's heart, and they were all right. "Then what do you say I should do?" Su Qingying asked. "Run," Wu Chen said. "How to run?" Su Qingying asked again. "Just run like this." After Wu Chen finished speaking, he pulled Su Qingying and ran away. "Run, literally, just run away." Su Qingying was pulled violently and started to run. She had good physical fitness. She didn't like sports in the early years, but she liked it in recent years, and she could completely keep up with Wu Chen's footsteps. The two ran towards the intersection on the other side of Area C of the golf course. The 2 bodyguards in the distance were stunned when they saw this scene, and then started chasing them like crazy. Wu Chen dragged Su Qingying to the intersection. There was a row of electric convertible sightseeing cars parked on the edge of the intersection. They could drive them casually here. They could drive them by themselves or ask the staff of the club to drive them. The keys were in the car. Wu Chen pulled Su Qingying into a sightseeing car, turned the key, stepped on the accelerator, and the sightseeing car drove out abruptly. The bodyguard rushed over and drove a sightseeing car to chase after them. A few minutes later, the two returned to the club building. Still running, Wu Chen pulled her through the lobby, and ran to the large parking lot in front of the entrance. Get in the car again. They went to Wu Chen's Lamborghini. The roar of the engine suddenly sounded in the parking lot. The blue Lamborghini reversed and flicked, drove up the driveway, ran into the main road and flicked again. It went straight to the gate. When the two bodyguards ran out of the gate of the building, the blue Lamborghini had already rushed out of the yard of the clubhouse and left in a hurry. The two bodyguards were already going crazy. They paused, and one of them shouted, "I'm going to pick up the car," and ran away wildly. The other took out his mobile phone and made a call with shaking hands. It immediately went through. "Ma'am, Miss ran away with that kid," the bodyguard said anxiously, his voice trembling. "What did you say?" The voice on the other end of the phone was almost shrill. Chapter 79. The rebound after extreme depression is really scary. The road conditions in the northern suburbs were very good, but there were few cars. Because it was too remote, there were very few cars on the road. Wu Chen stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, and the Lamborghini's speed increased in the most violent way. In less than 10 seconds, Lamborghini's speed exceeded 200 kilometers per hour. Su Qingying was sitting in the co-pilot, her body was leaning back against the seat, and her feet were subconsciously propped forward. When she just got into the car and sat down, her heart was beating extremely violently. It wasn't from running but from nervous excitement. She never thought that one day she would run away with a man she had known for less than an hour. And they ran hand in hand. For ordinary girls, this might just be a normal behavior after falling in love at first sight, or it might be a normal activity after a successful blind date. For her, it broke a taboo. And now, the soaring speed stimulated her adrenaline, she was breathing heavily, and her heart was beating even more violently. "Are you afraid?" Wu Chen, who was driving, glanced at her and asked with a smile. "No, I'm not afraid." Su Qingying's face turned pale, but she said she was not afraid. Even if there were no cars on the road, driving like this was extremely scary. Everything outside the windows on both sides was retreating rapidly like a stream of light. At this speed, if they were not careful, the car would crash and they would die. It's not that Su Qingying was not afraid, but she was just not particularly afraid. She felt more exciting. This was an experience she had never had before. Wu Chen also took Mu Qianqin across the car, and Mu Qianqin also liked excitement, but if the excitement was too much, she would be afraid. If she felt it was dangerous, she would make Wu Chen slow down, but Su Qingying didn't. The greater the suppression, the greater the rebound would be. Su Qingying was the kind of woman who could easily go from one extreme to another. Because she's been at one extreme for too long. The more obedient she was, the crazier she could be. However, although she herself had many thoughts, she never dared to take half a step beyond the threshold. The more scruples, the more depressed. Jingle bell. Phone ringtone. It belonged to Su Qingying. Although the wind noise was very loud at this speed, it was still audible. Su Qingying picked up the phone and looked at it, and her face changed drastically. Wu Chen didn't need to look to know that it was her mother who called. Su Qingying didn't dare to answer. "You might consider being yourself for a day," Wu Chen said, reducing the speed of the car. Su Qingying glanced at Wu Chen, then looked at the cell phone that kept ringing, hesitated for a few seconds, and then mustered up the courage to connect the cell phone, put it to her ear, and said, "Mom." "Where are you?" "In the car." "With whom?" "Friend." "Su Qingying. How did I teach you?" "Friend. When did you meet that friend? Don't you know who you are? He deserves you. Did I raise you up so that you could run away with a man? And run hand in hand with him? What about your restraint? What about your upbringing? You really let me down. Let me tell you, Su Qingying, come back now. Immediately. Come back here. Originally, she was asking in a cold voice, but suddenly broke out. She didn't even call her daughter or anything. She just called her by her name. The voice was so loud that Wu Chen could vaguely hear it. Su Qingying's eyes turned red immediately. Her mother hadn't yelled at her so loudly for a long time, because she had always been very good and excellent. Wu Chen further reduced the speed of the car, and finally controlled the speed at 60 kilometers per hour. Then he raised his hand and pressed it, lowering the window. The wind suddenly blew into the car. The whirring sound of the wind was also carried into the phone. Wu Chen turned his head and glanced at Su Qingying. Su Qingying also turned to look at Wu Chen. Why don't you talk? Are you pretending to be dumb? Su Qingying, don't forget your surname. You have done such a scandal. Are you shameless? Wu Chen could still vaguely hear it. This was called a scandal. Running hand in hand with a man was a scandal. From Su Qingying's mother's point of view, it did. That was a very traditional and controlling woman from a high-ranking family. Wu Chen glanced at Su Qingying again, but said nothing. Some choices, after all, Su Qingying had to decide by herself. Only when she decided for herself could she truly let go. Mom, I'm a human, a living person, not your puppet. What did you say? The sharp voice on the phone drifted with the wind, but then disappeared immediately, because after Su Qingying finished speaking, she shook her hand and left. She threw the mobile phone out of the car window. Because the car was moving forward, the mobile phone fell on the ground more than 10 meters behind the car, and it fell to pieces. In the car, Wu Chen pressed the button again and raised the car window. He suddenly slowed down and opened the window, just to make Su Qingying lose her phone. Su Qingying understood and made up his mind. There were some things that once there was a first time, there would be a second time. Ever since Su Qingying decided to run with Wu Chen, she already started to change. It is estimated that your mother will mobilize all the strength of the Su family to find us. Wu Chen said with a light smile. She's afraid of losing face, and she won't make a big fuss. Su Qingying said, turning her head to look out the car window. At this moment, she was very depressed, but there was a trace of stubbornness on her face. In fact, she had begun to misunderstand her mother a long time ago. Why couldn't she, Su Qingying, do what other people could do? She must live a dignified life. The kind that did not allow any flaws. Her mother always had infinitely high expectations of her, so there were infinitely high demands. Aren't you afraid that I will kidnap and sell you? Wu Chen asked again with a smile. Of course, what he said was meant as a joke. With Su Qingying's popularity in Donghai, it was impossible. But the meaning was well expressed. Su Qingying understood. Aren't you Li Ruobing's boyfriend? A man who knows my weaknesses and the real me, a man who came to disturb my life on purpose. Su Qingying glanced at Wu Chen and said. She was not a fool. On the contrary, she had a high IQ. In fact, she knew that some of Wu Chen's actions were not unintentional. For example, slapping her. You came out with me when you knew. Wu Chen wasn't surprised at all. She knew, after all, the reason they met was because Wu Chen knew her secret. Knowing, what does it matter? Su Qingying replied, then turned her head to look out of the car window, paused, and muttered again, no one has ever dared to approach me. I have always lived in the light, alone. Everyone, even some relatives, when I was young, they praised me, saying that I was the best. I was the child who they could always count on 100%, and when I was older, they thought I was different. Yes, a little older, I grew up, I started a business, I entered a company and started working. They started to respect me, flatter me, compliment me. Everyone compliments me, and my parents, my father especially, was always busy with work, but he always said that the greatest achievement in his life is not Jinfu Group, but me. He has cultivated me. It is the greatest achievement in his life. He will say this to anyone, at business banquets, at birthday parties, even at the negotiating table. My mother, she wants me to live as she imagined. She wants me to be better, always better than yesterday. She doesn't even allow me to eat a second bowl of rice, because one can't get fat, not even a little fat. She thinks I should be the most beautiful. Always be. Su Qingying's eyes turned red again as she spoke. Because Wu Chen knew her secret, she would tell Wu Chen these things in her heart. Wu Chen knew that he should be the first person to hear her say these words, and he should also be the last one. Su Qingying sniffed, fell silent for a while, turned her head to look at Wu Chen and said, "Although I understand that you did it on purpose, I also know that you may be my only chance. And, you, make me feel very comfortable. Really." Of course, Wu Chen would make her feel comfortable, because he understood it too well. He also knew that the reason why Su Qingying, knowing that there are tigers in the mountain, she prefers to travel to the mountain, was because she wanted to do this a long time ago. "I believe you have made the right choice. It is better to change earlier than to be terribly ill, with no cure," Wu Chen said with a smile. "Stop," Su Qingying said suddenly. Wu Chen turned his head to look at Su Qingying, stepped on the brakes, the speed of the car quickly returned to zero, and stopped on the side of the road. "You are Li Ruobing's boyfriend. You dare not tell what happened today, right? You are afraid of being known by her, right?" Su Qingying muttered, quickly unfastened her seatbelt, breathed faster, and stretched out her arms to hook Wu Chen's neck, kissed Wu Chen's mouth. Wu Chen was slightly taken aback. Because this moment came a little earlier than he imagined. The rebound after extreme depression was really scary. Chapter 80, Hidden Attributes. Su Qingying was a little crazy. She couldn't kiss, but she was crazy. This was a move that would completely destroy the image she maintained for many years, and all the radiance on her body. The closer to a perfect person, the less flaws could appear. Once they appeared, everything would be destroyed. Ordinary people, even people who already had big problems, didn't have this kind of problem. It's like a bad person who had done a lot of bad things suddenly started to do good things, and people around him would say that he was a prodigal son. It's too easy for a bad person to think about becoming a Buddha. They just had to put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha immediately. And a good person who had done too many good things suddenly did a bad thing. Something that could be accepted by the people around him, that was going from heaven to hell. People around them would say that he was pretending, that he turned out to be such a person. Everything good about him before would said to be a lie. Su Qingying had always been under the pressure of such a good guy. The burden on her was too heavy. She was so overwhelmed that she couldn't breathe. She had enough. Hiss. Wu Chen gasped suddenly, and pushed Su Qingying away. He raised his hand to touch the corner of his mouth, and looked at his fingertips. There was blood. "Just kiss, why are you biting?" Wu Chen pressed the corner of his mouth again. Although it wasn't serious, he was still bleeding. Su Qingying, who was pushed back, looked straight at Wu Chen. Breathing heavily, she came over abruptly, wrapped her arms around Wu Chen's neck, and kissed him. "Wait, don't, wait a minute." Wu Chen pushed Su Qingying away twice, and Su Qingying was pushed away and hugged up every time. "Calm down, okay." Pop. A crisp slap. Actually, Wu Chen didn't slap her hard. Su Qingying still needed to see someone, so there shouldn't be any injuries on her face. But in the sealed environment of the car, this slap was really loud. Su Qingying's left face blushed immediately. She covered her face and became honest all of a sudden. Obviously the left side of her cheek was hit, but her whole face was red, so red, and she was breathing very fast. She turned her head to look at Wu Chen. Her eyes were very subtle. There was no resentment, no anger, and no disbelief, but there was a tinge of expectation. "Are you sick?" Wu Chen reprimanded and stretched out his hand to pinch Su Qingying's arm. Su Qingying shrank back in pain, and covered the place where her arm was pinched again. It really hurt, but Su Qingying still looked straight at Wu Chen. Her face turned even redder, as if water was about to drip. Her eyes were still so subtle. Wu Chen hit her on purpose. Pinch her too. Not really angry, but on purpose. Wu Chen was not the kind of man who hits a woman when he gets angry. What kind of man was that? But if a woman wanted to be beaten, that's another matter. This was Su Qingying's ulterior secret. She was a masochist. Wu Chen knew. Su Qingying discovered that she had this attribute 3 years ago, by accident, after a busy work, in order to relieve the pressure brought by family, social, work, etc. She went to the gymnasium at home to hit sandbags. At that time, the female bodyguard who followed her casually gave some pointers and explained the technique of using force when punching. She became interested and wanted to fight with the female bodyguard in the ring. Really hit. The female bodyguard humored her, being very careful, but still hit. That was the first time in Su Qingying's life that she was beaten. That taste, she actually felt some kind of pleasure in it. Cool, she said it herself. The reason why Wu Chen knew so clearly, how she found out, including the details, was because Su Qingying told him these things herself. That was in reincarnation, after Wu Chen captured her one time. This was how she discovered her hidden attributes. But she never sparred with anyone after that, nor hit a sandbag again. Because after she was accidentally beaten by the female bodyguard, her mother knew. She was not allowed to practice with her again, and she was not allowed to hit the sandbag, because after a long time, it would cause obvious lines on her arms and destroy her perfection. After that, Su Qingying used other methods to verify her hidden attributes many times. She pinched herself, pricked her fingers with needles, and even bought candles secretly, dripping hot wax on her arms. She confirmed that she had that tendency. Maybe it's because she's been controlled too much, or maybe it's because she's been suppressed for too long. In that slight pain, she found the feeling of belonging. It relieved her stress, released her emotions, allowed her to relax and even enjoy. After confirming it, she once had fear, was very afraid, and felt that she was a pervert. She checked a lot of information about this on the internet. Saw a lot, including some related movies. Only then did the fear gradually drop. When she was still looking for information, she accidentally found a forum. A forum that could be called a gathering place for XX. There were a lot of people like her in the forum. The posts in the forum were also related to these things. Some were looking for a partner, some say they were confused, some felt that they had a psychological problem and asked for approval, and there were also some videos of completing the task, or related texts. Su Qingying had secretly read the information on the forum for a long time in private, but only read it without saying anything. The very few replies were all posts asking for approval, encouraging people who were as scared and confused as her. This had been the case for a year. Until 2 years ago. Su Qingying finally posted her first and only post. A full 3,000 words. Su Qingying also expressed her confusion in the post, mentioning her family, not mentioning her family background, but how her family treated her. There were a lot of unscrupulous complaints about her family and other people around her. She even expressed despair about life, saying that she was a puppet dressed up exquisitely. She mainly complained about her mother, who was traditional, stubborn, domineering, and had a strong desire to control. Of course, she also mentioned her hidden attributes. The purpose of her posting this was to vent, so she said everything that should be said and should not be said. On the internet, she didn't know anyone, and it's impossible to know who the other party was, so she dares to say it. She said that she wanted to fall in love, wanted to be beaten, she hoped that people around her would not be so careful with her, and would not praise herself so highly. She also said that she wanted to rebel against her mother, and wanted to do everything that her mother would not let her do. She wanted to do it all over again. The more out of line the better. This post was essentially a venting post. Although Su Qingying said everything, she didn't say anything about finding a partner in the post. The point was to vent. But on that forum, no one cared why she became a masochist. After the post was posted, Su Qingying was frightened. Not only did her post become a hot topic on the forum and was replied to by thousands, but she also received hundreds of private messages on the forum overnight. Almost all of them were asking her out. She was literally terrified. Very sorry. She felt that she was not the same as these people on the forum. The forum was just a bunch of lunatics. She regretted posting this post, but she had no way to delete it. She contacted the forum management, but the management would not delete it. The server of the forum was abroad, and it was difficult for her to use her connections to block it, or she dared not use her relationship at all. Because she dared not let anyone know what relationship she had with this forum. For the next few days, she frequently checked the forum to see when the popularity of her posts would drop. After the popularity of the post dropped, she seldom visited that forum, and gradually stopped. She decided to forget all this and let her special attributes become an eternal secret in her heart. 2 years passed, and she no longer took the initiative to think about this matter until she met Chen. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audio Wave to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.